Sacred Symbols, a PlayStation podcast, is brought to you by, well, you. If you want to learn how to support our show, go to patreon.com/laststandmedia. Greetings and salutations. Welcome back to Sacred Symbols, a PlayStation podcast. This is episode number 210. My name is Colin Moriarty. I'm joined as always by my friend, my son, Chris Raygun, who's with us today from the International Space Station. Chris, how are you today?
Oh man, I'm solid. Yeah. I'm good. I think possibly.
You got the COVID.
Yeah, and I feel it in my voice a little bit now. But I don't know. I still feel mostly fine. It just feels like mostly like a large inconvenience.
Because you can't be around others or whatever.
Yeah.
You choose not to be.
Yeah, I mean, the people that I'm staying with have had it recently, so I don't feel too bad about it because they got those little antibodies. But aside from that, I'm kind of just stuck inside or just like constantly masked up, which sucks. But whatever.
I'm sorry. I'm the perfect patient for a disease like that because nothing changes for me. You know, it's like, oh, you want me to be in isolation? Okay,
perfect.
I mean, if that's what you, I guess I'll change my behavior here.
Yeah.
People have been really laughing, Chris, lately because it seems like you're in a different. Well, you are in a different place like every week. So
yeah,
if you put up like the last 6 episodes, I think you have a different background in all 6 of them or something, which people were.
I think so. I think I'll just put up the green screen in every episode now, and then I'll just let people.
Yeah,
just put me wherever.
Exactly. That would be fun because I was saying you're in the ISS because you're just you know, you have the microphone. It's a pretty rudimentary setup, you know.
Yeah,
but we really could make it so that we have the background. So we have the starry sky, the little porthole, some computers. So we'll keep that in mind. Well, Chris, it's good to be here with you. And Dustin Furman, it's also good to be here with you. I'm sorry, executive producer of Last Stand Media. How are you today?
I've had a bit of a weird day, but not in a bad way.
You were up early today.
I was up early. So I'm on a new quest for retro games. And I'm not trying to spend a bunch of money. So I'm hitting yard sales. And today, particularly not normal for a Thursday, but I think a church rummage sale. So, and my parents are here visiting as well. So we're like, let's go do it. Let's check out this rummage sale. I found nothing except there was a Spyro 1, like PlayStation 1 copy. And I opened it and there was no disc in it. So I passed on it because it was a green box. But so, you win some, you lose some. And so I've been up way longer than normal. Like it feels like it should be late afternoon now. It kind of like totally messes up your sense of time. But I don't know. I don't hate it so far.
I noticed that just because I usually fall asleep between 1 and 2. And then I get up between 6 and 7. And I just I'm on my phone for a while. And then I go back to sleep. And I saw you in the Discord.
Right
at that time, so I was like, "Oh, it's interesting." I thought maybe something fun was happening, but no, nothing fun. Just going to a rummage sale.
Hey, it was fun.
But I'm glad you did that, and it's good to be here with you boys. Thank you all out there for being here with us as well. Sacred Symbols, a PlayStation podcast. We deliver it each and every week. You can get it 3 days early and ad free on the world's biggest video games media Patreon, patreon.com/laststandmedia. We could not do it without you. Early ad-free access to every episode of this show, and of course, exclusive access to episodes twice a week of Sacred Symbols Plus. We roll those out when do we roll those out? Tuesdays and Saturdays on Patreon. So we've had a lot of really good episodes recently. I had Vincent Janito on about Street Fighter. We did a deep dive on Super Perils of Baking. I did an awesome episode about PSVR and PSVR 2. We did a spoiler cast for The Quarry. We did a primer for Final Fantasy 14 with a super fan of the game. We had a gamer call in from Ukraine. We did a call-in show, kind of impromptu, that went up recently. Now, 2 episodes that I wanted to bring to people's attention. One goes live a few days after this goes live, I think, on Patreon. That is what I would think is one of the great episodes that we've recorded in recent memory, I think, which is the 5 of us getting together with the Dukes and just talking for 2 hours. The time just flew by. And I really enjoyed that episode. And so that's going to go live soon. And we actually published this one early, which is that we are the first people to talk specifically and deeply with Lethos, the guys that are making the game Ashfall, which has been looked at as kind of an NFT game. But we talked to those guys. It's Michael Mumbauer and John Garvin, both with deep PlayStation provenance. And I'm sorry, Dustin, rather, what did you think of that episode? Because you were there and you actually got involved a little bit towards the end, but I wanted you to monitor everything. That episode is doing pretty well. And I was excited to be able to talk to them about the game.
Yeah, well, what I'm excited that people are, or at least from the feedback we've seen from the episode, is that it is in line with our other, not that this is a controversial episode, but it is kind of about a controversial topic involving blockchain and NFT stuff. And so I'm seeing people glean different opinions and takeaways from the episode. And that's always our goal, is just kind of present things, maybe push back in some areas and let our own opinions be changed in some ways. But really, it's up to the audience. And so seeing that kind of response has been really cool.
And let's stick with you to talk about merch, because finally we have the merch op up. You can go to laststandmedia.store, right? Is that right? Laststandmedia.store.
Shop is dead. Long live the store.
Yeah, laststandmedia.store. And we have t-shirts. We have, I think, a keychain. We have a ton of stickers, including Smug Maddie Xbox sticker, which is my favorite one.
For the video people, this is the holographic Smug Xbox sticker, which is really nice. This is new stuff. If you were part of the soft launch, these are new products. So then free shipping. We've got a holographic Last Stand sticker on stickers. Free shipping on stickers. Thank you. So holographic, and of course the Sacred Sacrament sticker with the Pope holding the.
I hear that's selling a lot. I heard that's selling a lot. I heard that.
So here's what I'll say is that we got 100 of these made. So they are technically limited right now. We probably could make more, but I'm just going to say there's only 100. Go get them. Will we make more? Who knows?
Yeah.
I don't know.
I mean, it's completely arbitrary and capricious if we do, but it's cool. Micah's been working this, and she's working hard. She's getting everything shipped out of our house. We have it all stored and inventoried at our house, and we're really proud of the merch. I think it's really good, and it's kind of serendipitous, as we said, because as I wrote a letter on Patreon, I kind of was just banging my head against the wall for years with merch. Like, I found a really great guy for merch. He got out of the business. Then we found another pretty good company with merch. They got out of the business. Then we found a good solution with merch, but the customer service was just really bad. So that pushed us into a corner where we made a decision to do it this way. And the result is that I think we have just as high quality merch. It's cheaper than it used to be. The shipping, like we said, for stickers and stuff is free, and our margins are even higher. So everyone wins. Like, everyone wins. I don't know how it all
there you go.
How it all worked out, but we're excited. So thank you for supporting us over there. Laststandmedia.store. Check it out. We'll have more rolling out soon too. Wanted to give a shout out real quick to Gene Park, our buddy, friend of the show, Washington Post games writer. He has been diagnosed with colon cancer, which is so sad. It's interesting because my grandfather died of colon cancer, and I have lifelong stomach issues, and that's kind of like my great fear and my expectation is that that's what's going to happen to me, is that I'm going to get colon cancer. And so that just resonated with me. I wrote to him privately and talked to him privately, but I wanted to just give a shout out to Gene Park. I don't know if you guys saw, his name was trending on Twitter.
I did see that.
Yeah.
And they tagged it under J-pop.
Yeah.
He made a joke about it. It was good.
That's awesome that they did that to him.
Or maybe it was K-pop. Either way.
Probably K-pop. I don't see too much about J-pop, but
no.
Racist to assume that he's Korean.
Oh.
But yeah, Gene, we're wishing you the very best.
Yeah.
Very welcome back here anytime you want to be, of course, but anything we could do for you, as I told him privately, we will be happy to do that. All right, what's going on here? Oh, I thought you'd appreciate this. Tanner Brandt wrote in and said, "Sup, my slittas. I recently went down to a GameStop while wearing my Sacred Symbol shirt, and the clerk greeted me with a firm stand down. We ended up having a nice chat about gaming and the podcast while I browsed. I had never met a fellow fan of a podcast I like in real life, so it was pretty cool. Just wanted to share my experience and shout out that guy." What do you think of that, Dustin? You're becoming an influencer.
The stand down thing is just continually surprising. Like, when I hear people with really latching onto that, which is cool. But no, this is cool. I like the real life interactions. Very, very cool. And it's weird because obviously there are many thousands of Sacred Symbols fans, but when you spread them out all over the world, then there's not necessarily going to be many in like smaller towns and stuff like that. And so when you find one in the wild, that's like a special little event. And so shout out to these boys. You guys should hang out, get together, maybe take a nice long walk on the beach. Maybe there's connection there.
Become best friends.
Yeah.
And lovers.
Who knows?
And make a family together.
Yeah, you can have a nice walk. You can have a nice slow walk on the beach, like in Days Gone, with your wife, with your damn wife.
We don't care. All right. What else here? Oh, Dylan Michael wrote in. People say this sometimes, so I just wanted to bring this up, see what you guys thought. Hey, CDC. I'm here with a question about the podcast rather than PlayStation. I was really enjoying the discourse on Sacred Symbols about The Last of Us remake, as for once, it seemed like Dustin and Chris were finally taking on the mighty Colin in a 2-versus-1 battle of opinions. Oftentimes, Dustin agrees with Colin, or it seems Chris doesn't state his full opinion. How do you guys balance your conversations? There's not much debating on Sacred Symbols between the three of you, even though you have such different outlooks on games. Have you ever felt an argument coming on and kept quiet? Thanks, and keep those nuts up. I don't know what that means, but thank you for writing in. People write in about this sometimes, that I have some sort of adverse or like sinister influence on everyone around me, where no one wants to say what they really want to say around me. And this is something that has been said since I was at IGN, and kind of funny. I don't really understand why that is, because I don't want this word debate has been so overused and so stupid. I'm not really interested in having debates. I'm not interested in making awkward conversation and stilted conversation. We're trying to have conversations that are listenable. I let things go all the time. So, and I'm sure other people do too. So I don't know what people really want sometimes when I hear inquiries like this, where it's like, what do you want us to do? It's like Skip and Shannon or something. If you guys know Skip Bayless and Shannon Sharp, which is like a famous sports show where they're like always fighting with each other. Yeah. It's just like kind of not what we are. What do you think about that, Chris?
Yeah, I mean, like it's I don't feel that at all. Like I've never felt like, oh, I can't say this. I have felt I can't say something because I'm scared of you guys. like you guys scare me. like because every now and then I'll see like some random clip on like Sacred Symbols, like, look at what Chris said. I'm like, that's not even what I fully said. And so it's just like, sometimes I think about that, but even that doesn't necessarily stop me from saying. Usually, if I feel like I haven't stated, or if it feels like I haven't stated my full opinion, I feel like it's usually because I've said as much as I care to, and I don't want to like repeat myself. And I know that I have that habit because I record and edit myself all the time, and I know that I have this pattern. So when I'm dealing with a show that somebody else edits and that I have to subject them to, I don't want to do that. So if my response is just something I've said already, I try to keep that down. So maybe that's what you're picking up on. But like, I'm not. Yeah, there's never been a time where I've been like, well, Colin, I agree because I don't. You know, like it's not something that's ever happened for me. Anyway.
We've never had. I think some people might think it's like before the show. I'm like, you motherfuckers better listen.
Yeah.
If any of you dare talk badly about Naughty Dog or this or that, it's like these things. I write the document. I've started this habit of putting people's names next to everything so that it kind of draws your eye, and so you know what to prepare for and all this. And otherwise, I have no idea what the fuck anyone's going to say. And Dustin, how much do I scare you?
So on the show, I'm not afraid at all. In fact, you once told me, I don't remember what the context was, but you're like, on the show, we are performing. I mean, it's an audible, or I guess visual for the video watchers, but it's a stage. We're true. We're ourselves, but we are performing. And so it's like, I don't know. I've never felt like I couldn't voice an opinion or argue. In fact, I've always found it annoying when people say that, because I feel like there are many times when I and Chris have both pushed back and no one ever seems to remember those times. And so I feel like there is a healthy amount of that. But like you said, it's not really how we are. It's not how I am. I hear things every single week that I disagree with, both of you. But a lot of times it just comes down to taste. And arguing about taste is so fucking boring. Like, to me, I would much rather argue about something that isn't opinion. I mean, you know what I mean? Like, if Chris likes this game and I don't like it, I don't want to argue with him about why I think it's bad. That's
right, exactly. That's not content I've ever been interested in. That's exactly right. If I say, I like the shooting in The Last of Us, just as an example, and Chris says, I don't like the shooting in The Last of Us, then my answer is, but it's like, well, why don't you like the shooting in The Last of Us? Here's why I like the shooting in The Last of Us. Like, It's just weird to me. So I don't know why you would expect that necessarily, but I agree with you. I think you guys disagree with me all the time, so I'm not quite sure what people are expecting.
If people don't think so, I want you guys to go ahead and go to our 2-part Last of Us 2 episode and tell us that we don't. that entire thing is just basically rooted in disagreement. So that was a saga. I wish we got that on video. And it was great because we're not arguing. This isn't like on the Snark Tank. I'll argue for the sake of just being belligerent. We had a whole argument the other day about like whether or not I respect roaches enough to call the police on someone if I found them torturing them, which I don't because they're not animals as far as I'm concerned.
Right.
But that was a fun argument. That was because that was just like a bunch of dumb hypothetical and like fake philosophy. But like video games, like, oh, Colin likes the shooting in The Last of Us. I don't. We're going to have like a 30-minute argument about that. I can't even imagine. It's
when people used to write like broadsides about each other in the 18th century. Like just go back and forth for years about nothing, and have like these rivalries that end up in duels and all the, I don't know. It's kind of goes into what I said, and we'll talk about it a little later, but what I said last week about just kind of accepting how people play and how they interact with everything. I just am not out to change opinions. I'm out to try to be a tastemaker when I can by simply telling you what I think is good and analyzing the industry from an honest point of view. Otherwise, the discourse will come or it won't. But it's always funny that when we get clipped out in quotes, it's always in this context that makes the show seem so much more harsh than it really is. And I think some people come in thinking that that's what it is, and it isn't.
Yeah.
Or one-sided.
Yeah.
Like those clips are always us bashing Xbox and never the like probably 90% of the other time where we're bashing Sony.
And also I love however whenever one of those clips goes viral, it's always or semi-viral. I don't know how viral these things get. They get pretty big, a lot bigger than I thought they would. And it'll be like, look at how Chris doesn't say anything. And then at the very end, I'm literally about to speak. It's like, thanks, I guess. Christ.
Oh my God. Well, Dylan, thank you for writing in, and I'm glad you enjoyed the battle against the mighty Colin.
Oh.
Who's over here puffing sativa and doesn't even know where he is. Okay. Let's get into some corrections. Benjamin Mama wrote in and said, hello, Sacred Boys, writing in with a quick correction. Colin's second favorite son, Dustin, incorrectly stated that Resident Evil Code Veronica, he, by the way, put a trademark sign after Resident Evil, which I appreciate, isn't on PS4. It did, in fact, get released as a digital-only release in May 2017. Love the show. Now, I don't mean to make an excuse for myself here, but I'm going to make an excuse for myself. People that have been following me for a long time know that from about April 2017 until the fall of 2017, that's when I was out. I wasn't really playing games or paying attention to games very much. So anything that I missed during that time or slipped through the goalie, that's probably why. Otherwise, I would have saved you there. How do you feel about Code Veronica being available on PS4? Will you play it?
So just real quick, I have no memory of saying that it wasn't on PS4. I'm not saying. I remember you saying
it because in my mind, I immediately flipped a coin where I was like, I think it might be. I don't know if it is. Just going to leave it because I do try to protect everyone when they say things that.
Right.
That's usually the most forceful I am in a show is when I interject when someone says something. I'm like, I got to interject because they're going to get you.
Right. Oh, definitely.
Yeah. Because they're going to get you.
Right.
That's what I'm saying. You guys are scary.
Yeah. What we need to do going forward is have a lightning rod take just to like gather all the comments like, hey, everybody, Last Guardian is better than the other. What's the Shadow of the Colossus? Just saying. So latch onto that statement, which I fully believe is true. Anyway, Code Veronica. I actually bought this last night because it's on sale. I think it's $6 on PSN. I bought that, and
you wipe
I bought
your ass with
Resident Evil
$6. That's nothing to you.
Yeah, I mean, just why not? $6.
I love that saying. I don't hear a lot of people saying that anymore. Like he wipes his ass with $100 bill. My mom and dad used to say that shit all the time about people that they didn't like. All right. I'm sorry. Do you have more to say?
No, just there's a huge Resident Evil sale. If you're interested in that IP at all, pretty much all of them are on sale on PlayStation right now for a lot of real good deals.
You should be interested. Resident Evil is excellent.
Yes.
Code Veronica, I really don't remember. I remember the cover, but I don't remember.
Yeah.
I had it on Dreamcast, I think. I found to say I had it on Dreamcast. All right. Mitchell Stricker wrote in with a correction for Chris. He says, I have to correct an egregious error that Chris made on last week's show. He claimed during the cheese discussion that Tillamook cheese was located north of Sacramento in the Central Valley of California. Tillamook is in fact located in Tillamook, Oregon, along the coast. Central Valley is south of San Francisco, by the way, I think. They have the best ice cream, and I hope you all one day visit. Enjoy the rest of your show, boys.
Oh yeah.
So I must say, so many people wrote in about this. I think I told Dustin that the second I saw it, I was like, this is going to be. How do I put this? Every once in a while, there's an error in the show that I know people are going to gleam onto, and it's going to annoy me. And when I saw that was like one of the first comments when the show went on Patreon, I'm like, motherfucker.
That does make sense.
I think 15 people wrote in about this, like to the show, not to mention all the comments everywhere. So
that does
geographical Pacific Northwest correction for you, Chris.
That does make sense because I remember because I took a trip to Sacramento then to San Francisco and then to this place in Oregon. And I guess but this was years ago and I guess I mixed them all up. Anyway, that place is still awesome. Even though it smells like cow shit. That's like everywhere. You can't go anywhere without smelling it. But maybe that adds like some, you know how they say like taste is like 50% smell or whatever the hell. Like maybe the smell of bovine shit really makes the ice cream pop.
Wow, you were fucking angry about that. I love it. Look at you. You're a bovine shit. That was very well executed. I loved that. That was very well done.
Take that, comments.
All right.
You're done.
We have one more, I think. Oh, it wasn't really this isn't a correction for Dustin, but more of a compliment, I guess. This is from a pseudonym who says, fellas, I grow tired of people using harsh slurs, such as nerd, geek, or God forbid gamer, when describing our community. Just wanted to thank Dustin for using the politically correct term people of niche hobbies in the last episode. Thanks, and put a ring on that chicken already. Thank you, a pseudonym, for writing in.
Do you remember me saying this?
I don't. Do you?
I don't either.
I don't remember this at all.
Dude, I know what it's like. See, people for many years have told me that I've said a lot of stuff, and I just take your word for it. Because there's no way that I remember saying something on Podcast Beyond in 2011 like you remember it. Like people literally, when I meet them, and it's awesome, but they're like, man, I've been listening to you since 2011. You said the funniest thing about PlayStation All-Stars or something. And I'm like, that's 10,000 hours ago of content for me. I have no idea what was going on at that point. That's why I think it would be fun to go back and listen to some of that stuff, just because it's like, what the hell am I even doing and saying?
Yeah.
I don't know.
It's almost like peering into a different reality. Because there was a time like before I did podcasts or before I did streaming where like I knew what I said because I would write it and like edit it meticulously. And now it's just like I have no idea. The worst of it is like when somebody comes up to me and like repeats a joke to me and then that I've said, and then I'm like, wow, that's really funny. And then they're like, oh, you said it. And then I feel like a complete asshole because I just completely just filleted myself.
Well, that happened. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Dustin.
I was just going to say that happened to me at Too Many Games where I met a guy who runs this awesome it's like they make adapters for like you can plug it into your Nintendo 64 and then it has HDMI. Anyway, I was talking to him, cool dude, and he mentioned the star transitions. Like he was like, oh yeah, and the star transitions with Ben, like not doing them, like that whole interaction. And it took me probably 5 seconds. I was like, oh yeah. Oh, like that. Like I was like man, I just looked like a complete moron. Fans, sometimes people are nervous to talk to us, but really it should be the opposite way around because I never can remember stuff like that. It's always embarrassing.
Yeah.
I always feel embarrassed because I know names sometimes and I know faces sometimes, but I never know why I know the name or the face. At the meet and greet before the show in Richmond, we met some people and I'm like, I know you. Like I know you, but I don't know why I know you. It could be for one of 10 different things. I might have seen your picture online for all I know. Or it could be I met you at E3 in 2011. I have no idea.
Yeah, you said that to me, Colin, when I met you. Well, it wasn't the first time I met you, but when I was at your apartment when Ben was on Fireside Chats, that's what you said to me. You're like, I've seen you before, but I don't know where. I was like, yeah, we've met one other time. But so yeah, it's a classic thing.
I've seen you on the news.
Yeah,
that's so funny how it all worked out. I remember you sitting there on the floor when I recorded that episode.
Other chairs.
Yeah.
I'm like my voice is briefly in it or something. So that was my first appearance.
Fireside Chats. BetterHelp is a longtime sponsor of Sacred Symbols, and listeners of our podcast can get 10% off their first month of online therapy sessions at betterhelp.com/symbols. My friends, your mind is pretty much everything. Yes, physical health is also essential, but if you're not feeling up to snuff mentally, then that's a problem, and you should do something about it. See, the beauty of being human is exercising our agency, and so when you're feeling sick, you go to the doctor. And when you're feeling down, out, overwhelmed, anxious, or depressed, it's important you talk to a professional, which is where BetterHelp comes into play. See, BetterHelp makes it easier than you could have possibly imagined to connect with a mental health professional, and, as I said, if you put your shoulder into it and choose to seek solutions instead of dwelling and marinating and all of the rest, then you're doing much of what you can do to better your situation. See, we all deal with trials and tribulations in our lives. If having agency is human, then so is experiencing struggle. But today we have so many tools to deal with all of it. By going to betterhelp.com/symbols and signing up, you'll be connected with a therapist in under 48 hours, and you can work with them in so many different ways. You can talk over video or over audio. You can even exchange messages and texts. This truly modern and accepting approach acknowledges what's obvious. You don't need to see a professional face-to-face to get the help you need. And as someone who has been anxious my entire life, previous bouts with therapy have been helpful. I think therapy can be useful for you too, whether you're similarly anxious or stressed or feel depressed or overwhelmed or are having relationship or work issues or just about anything else. It's important to talk it out, get some great help to better your situation and your outlook, and do the legwork necessary to be your best. I take care of my mind every day. I float around in the pool and stare at the sky. I work out to try to get that anxious energy moving and out. I try to find quiet time to read and just be. But I also know when it's time to seek greater assistance, to talk to someone who knows more, to seek the next level of care. Do you know too? Open your mind to therapy your way with BetterHelp at betterhelp.com/symbols. That's BetterHelp.com/SYMBOLS. Again, get 10% off your first month of therapy sessions at betterhelp.com/symbols. It's summertime here in America, so it's an especially dicey time for skincare. That's because the sun does massive damage to your skin simply by being exposed to it, and I should know. I had basal cell carcinoma on my face from a suntan lotionless childhood on Long Island, a place where apparently no one cared about the damage the blazing ball in the sky was capable of. But I digress. It's good to be vigilant this time of year, which is why it seems appropriate to talk about a longtime sponsor of Sacred Symbols, Curology. See, Curology makes skincare so simple that even I can comprehend it, and that's saying something since my usual regimen involves bar soap in the shower and the same type of lotion I've been using for like 20 years once I get out. Curology dares you to break out of your simple routine and expect more from your skin through proper guided care. And when I use Curology products, there's no doubt at all that I can see and feel the difference. Guys, if you want ultra easy skincare that's actually made for your skin, Curology is the way to go. You'll get a custom prescription cream made for you by a dermatology provider for your specific goals, whether that's tackling acne, clogged pores, skin texture, dark spots, fine lines, or something else. You start by taking a short online quiz, and if it's a good fit, they'll ship you your formula right to your door. What Curology continues to prove to me over time is that while you can get acceptable results with other products, you almost always get lulled into this false sense of that being the best possible outcome. But then I use Curology's cleanser and I remember anew how much cleaner my face is after I use it. I mean, you can literally feel it just being in that cleaner skin. And then I get out of the shower and I apply some of Curology's skin cream and my face feels so much softer to the touch, an especially meaningful feat this time of year as I'm being mercilessly beaten down by Virginia's summer sun. A sun that wants to turn me into leather. But what I think I like most about Curology is how simple the entire process is. You'll wonder why you weren't incorporating such an easy series of processes into your life earlier that will make your skin feel better, cleaner, brighter, and more. We all know our own skin, and so while sun damage is my issue, you have your own to deal with, no doubt, and Curology's professionals will help you find what's right for you. So get started with Curology just like I did, with a free 30-day trial at Curology.com/sacred. Just pay $5 for shipping and handling. That's Curology.com/sacred. Curology.com/SACRED to start your free 30-day trial. Cancel anytime. Prescription subject to consultation. Okay. Oh, one more here. There's a couple more actually we got to get through, I guess, here. Chris A. wrote in and said, "Hey, CDC, this question is directly related to Colin, but Chris and Dustin, I would love to hear your inputs. What are your thoughts on phone calls and why don't you like them?" Colin, I think you've mentioned you don't like them, and I had no thoughts on them until recently, the amount of times I've been on the phone with my girlfriend and how annoying of a process it all is. Often enough, there's static, or I can't hear properly, or she calls me while she's walking on the street, and I can hear the car down the block louder than I can hear her. It's also frustrating and infuriating, and I can't bring myself to tell her, because she clearly loves talking to me on the phone. Yes, I love hearing her voice, but how should I approach this? Should I tell her not to call me? Should I just ignore all of her calls and say I missed them? Do I get off my phone altogether and go off the grid? Thanks in advance. I wanted to talk about this momentarily because I can't begin to express to you guys how much I hate the phone. Every once in a blue moon, it's really... there's a half dozen people or so that I wouldn't mind talking on the phone to at any given time because I'm not really uncomfortable with them. And there are situations like even with Dustin where like something needs to happen and I'm like, I'm just going to call him. It's just easier for that to be. But generally speaking, I would love an option to turn the phone functionality off on my phone. In other words, and I think you can turn your cellular off, but then you would be relying on just, Wi-Fi and all that. So there's not an elegant way to really do it. And I just hate talking on the phone. I hate it. Everyone that knows me knows not to call me. And I think might have been on Knockback that the last person I had a break in my life of this was my Aunt Joni. God bless her. I love Aunt Joni. But she called me so many times where I was like, please, like, I don't want to talk on the phone. It's not because I'm not trying to be mean. It's like, I don't even know what to say on the phone. Yeah. Nothing is going on in my life. I don't do anything but work and play video games. You don't give a fuck about what I'm doing. I guarantee you, I'll save you the trouble. Chris, are you as adverse to phone calls as I am?
Yeah, I don't like it for a variety of different reasons. I think that just generally audio quality is so much worse than every other option to me. Like, it's just like, if I'm going to talk to you, I'd just like, I'd rather accept like a Discord call or like a FaceTime if that's really necessary. Because I could do that. Because I could just like put the phone down and I could just talk. Like, there's good speaker functionality. You can hear me. But for some reason, whenever I talk to somebody on the phone, it feels like I'm talking to somebody through a walkie-talkie from the 1930s. It feels like entirely hypothetical, ancient Bioshock technology that I'm using. And I cannot for the life of me understand why anybody would want to do that or want to expose themselves to that. That and the fact that I just don't like having half of the information about somebody that I'm speaking to. If I'm talking to somebody, I kind of need to like, it either needs to be a text message or I'm with them in person and I can see them. You know what I mean? Like, or even like something like this where I can see you guys. The whole like, I can hear you, but I can't see you feels weird to me because I feel like I have less to say. I feel like I have less to go off of. I feel like there's obviously context clues in the way that people are like feeling, like based on like their body movements and their face that like I can't infer. So like if somebody calls me and they're like, hey, like it's like, oh man, are they depressed or is this a joke? Like I'm immediately I'm immediately thrown off guard because I have like half of the information that I would normally have if I was just speaking to them directly.
I totally understand. It's weird because I used to, when I was younger, when landlines were still a thing, like I remember getting my portable phone in my room in the 90s and how excited I was to have like my own, it wasn't my own line, but it was just a phone that I could have and talk to people with. And I didn't mind doing that. And even when I got my first cell phone in 2000 or 2001, we used to call people and talk to them. But at some point, I was just like, I don't want to do this anymore. Maybe it allows you to feed into like your worst anxious instincts. And maybe that's what happened to me. But Dustin, how do you feel about phone calls?
It really depends. If I have to call any like a business or something like a doctor's office, anxiety. I can't stand that. I hate it because it's like Chris said, it's hard to hear like this. It sounds so bad. And so you're trying to like communicate. And I hate it when it's like you're reading off like a code or something. And they're like A as in apple, B as in boy. And it's like, no, like I don't want to do that ever. But overall, as far as talking to people I know, Holly will call me sometimes when she's coming, like she'll call me to let me know she's on the way home from somewhere. I'm like, you could have just texted me. But she liked hearing my voice. She just wanted to call me. And so I try to be respectful of that.
Yeah.
Because it's not too bad, right? It's like, it's okay. I can deal with that. But I don't know. I don't really talk to people like as I want to call and talk to so-and-so. Maybe my dad, but it's usually because something's wrong in my house and I need advice or something like that. But
yeah,
there's a different feeling calling someone on Discord or something like that. Like I've specifically like it's been a little while now, but Locke and I sometimes would just hop on on a voice call on Discord and just talk to each other, because it's like, how else are we really gonna talk to each other? I mean, there is just text, but there's a different feeling when it's low latency and high quality voice than whatever whatever horrible connection a phone is. So
yeah,
it's a mixed bag for me.
One thing I will say is, if you're the type of person who is still leaving voicemails, I need you to stop.
Oh,
I need you to really stop it. Like, cut it out with that shit. Like, I my voicemails are full, and they've been full for years, because I can't imagine that anything in there is going to, like, just text me. If something really needs my attention, you can text it to me. I'm not going to, like, go into this, like, sub app to listen to my voice messages from, like, random companies. Or it's like, your car insurance just went up 5,000%. And it's like, cool, thanks. Pretty useful.
Appreciate
like,
it.
It's all spam and bullshit. And even when it is something that's, like, important, the idea, can you imagine if something really, really important happened and someone left you a voicemail and then left it at that? Like, they didn't text you about it after, they just left it in the voicemail.
Right.
Psycho.
Totally agree with you. Yeah. How am I supposed to know? I have to listen to it? I don't think so. I'm not going to. I totally agree with you. My favorite thing is, and I still do it sometimes when I leave voicemails specifically for my dad, because I know that he just never answers his phone. And so that's how he calls me back. But I still do the thing where I'm like, hey, Dad, it's Colin. It's 8 p.m. on Saturday. It's like, why am I still telling you the timestamp? I don't need to tell you that. You definitely know. But you're right, where it should have just been like, I just ping your phone and let you know, like, I'm thinking. And of course, sometimes we make phone calls and we hope we get the voicemail. Right.
Oh, yeah. 100%.
I mean, you got a Sly Dial. Have you heard of that?
What is that?
So there's a service, and I think it's free. I don't remember exactly how it works, but it's called Sly Dial. And you call in, and then you enter the number that you want to leave a message but not call. Yeah, Sly Dial. Here it is. Ringless voicemail.
Yeah.
And so then it just automatically puts a message in their voicemail without you having to call them. It's fantastic.
That's so cool.
We're not sponsored by Sly Dial, but this is a service that I highly recommend.
We want to talk to each other and interact with each other so little that people are making billion-dollar unicorn ideas totally around not talking to each other. This is a brilliant idea. I love it.
Dude, yeah, there's an app now for it. It used to be you had to call the Sly Dial number and then reroute it, but now you can just call directly from the Sly Dial app.
$29.99 a year for the premium monthly annual plan. Send unlimited live voicemails to one phone number at a time.
I got to be real. I don't like this at all.
No?
This makes me upset, because this means that I could get a voicemail and then the person doing that to me doesn't have to go through the anxiety of, like, waiting through the phone call.
Sure.
That's like all, you're safe, and then I got the fallout from it.
There's something to be said about that, I think. You're right. Okay. Is there anything else? Oh, there's one more thing before we get into the news. Collier wrote in and said, hey, slitter knitters. I don't like that.
No. Yeah, me neither. No.
Colin, because I'm not a knitter, you know? Who knits? Some people probably knit. I find myself ending my department-wide emails with, as always, feel free to reach out with any questions, comments, concerns, thoughts, and ideas, to the point that I've been doing it subconsciously for years and didn't notice until someone poked at it. Fuck you, Brett. Is this something you came up with, or did you get it from someone else? I need to know who the fuck's mojo I've been stealing. Stay safe. All right, well, that is just the thing I started saying, and then I just started repeating it. I don't know where it came from. So it's definitely mine, but I don't know why I started saying it. I don't know why I started saying greetings and salutations. I don't know when I started saying that. It was just for a long time ago.
Yeah.
So I don't know, man. You live in a weed cloud long enough, you don't really know where anything comes from or how anything happened. It just
or what you
did.
said, apparently.
Right. That's exactly right.
Yeah.
All right, my friends, let's get into the news finally. A few smaller pieces of news before we get into what we're playing, and then we get into the bigger pieces of news, of course, as we always do here on Sacred Symbols. Thanks for being here. All right, so Ubisoft revealed that they are having an event. First of all, Skull and Bones is supposed to be revealed today, I think, when we're recording the show. But I don't give a fuck enough about it to wait to record. So just assume that they announced Skull and Bones and it's coming this fall, probably. But there's going to be a Ubisoft Forward on September 10th, a showcase, multi-game showcase, they say. And it says, quote, Ubisoft Forward returns in full force, ready to reveal updates and news on multiple games and projects from Ubisoft teams around the world, end quote. Dustin, let's go to you first. Anything you want to see from Ubisoft? Anything you're interested in? I mean, it's kind of hard to get too excited about them, though I like their games very much. I'm hoping to see Heartland. I mean, that's what I want to really see.
Colin, you are wrong. Ubisoft makes bad games, and I hate them. So I think that you should stop talking about them, and I'm gonna spend the next 10 minutes listing why.
And that's how you really feel, right? You don't like Ubisoft.
I actually really don't like.
No, I know.
Games.
But I'm saying, I understand. Yeah. Yes, I'm just, okay.
They, those games, I've played a lot of them. In fact, there was a time when I played through a lot of Assassin's Creed games, and they just kind of all blended into my mind. And I'm trying to think what would appeal to me from them, and particularly the stuff we've seen recently, whether it's X Defiant or that other Ghost Recon free-to-play game. There's nothing that's really intriguing me about the future of this company. I mean, for real, the main thing I like from them is like Rayman. Rayman was the first PlayStation game that I ever owned, that and Crash Bandicoot 3. And so they already kind of did a Rayman revival. Maybe it's time for a Rayman 3D platformer in lieu of like Rayman 3.
Maybe it's time for a Rain Man 3D platformer.
Whoa.
Oh my Dustin Hoffman and Tom Cruise.
Good Lord.
Where you just jump from box to box and he rattles off facts about the Cincinnati Reds. All right, Chris, anything you want to see from Ubisoft at this September event?
I don't know. I'm kind of with Dustin where I do think Rayman was genuinely like the most enjoyment I got at, especially Rayman Legends. I thought that was great. And it would be nice to see more of that type of game. And I think I always get the smaller titles from these big publishers mixed up. But I'm fairly sure they did. I could be wrong on this, but I'm fairly sure they did like Child of Light as well.
No, the Ubisoft. Yeah, they did.
Mm-hmm.
UBR was Child of Light and Valiant Hearts.
Yeah, I always get like those like This War of Mine, like those types of games always mixed up based on the big publishers. But I mean, I like that stuff from Ubisoft a lot. I think that the stuff whenever they focus on smaller scale stuff, I think it's interesting. I did think Immortals Phoenix Rising was something. I think there was something there. I don't know if it landed exactly fantastically, but it did feel different enough to me that I was like, okay, this is nice. This is a nice change of pace. It would be cool to see more of this. But I think ultimately I'm kind of checked out on Ubisoft because I feel like they're in such a, I feel like Ubisoft is in a lot more turmoil than a lot of people think they are. Like it feels like a really substantially mismanaged publisher. At least from the outside, like looking in, like where's Beyond Good and Evil 2? This Skull and Bones thing is insane. Like how this is
Prince of Persia also.
Prince of Persia. The remake got basically indefinitely delayed or something. Like,
the team got taken off of it in India, and I think it was brought to Montreal. Maybe.
Yeah, that's pretty big for a remake, and I understand that happened technically with like the Last of Us remake, but Prince of Persia is not The Last of Us. Like, I understand why you would want to get the pedigree of The Last of Us and put that in the most perfect hands possible. But Prince of Persia is a really old game. Like, any modern studio should have no trouble remaking that in a way that's completely satisfactory and completely fine. So, I don't know, man. I think I don't know if I'm looking forward to anything. I would like to see a Splinter Cell, but I doubt it because I've been saying this since we started the damn show, and there has been nary a mention, really, of a proper Splinter Cell outside of that little thing where they were like, "Hey, by the way, we're working on it." It's like, cool, thanks. And it'll be an open world live service, fucking loot box, microtransaction riddled NFT hellscape,
some sort of nightmare. Yeah, they're interesting because they have these pretty solid sellers in the newer Assassin's Creed games. They have a couple of Tom Clancy games that are doing really well over a long period of time, like Siege. But then they have Far Cry. I mean, Far Cry 6 was, I think, the second best-selling game last year, or maybe not of last year, but of the last 12 months, something like that. Overall. So they had a big seller there too. I thought Far Cry 6 was awesome. I guess I'll be a little more optimistic than you guys because I want to see that Avatar game because it's from It's from Massive, the guys that do The Division. And so I think that'll be interesting. And then I'm really interested to see, like I said earlier, Heartland, which is apparently going to be the free-to-play console spinoff of The Division, interestingly done by Red Storm, which is the Ubisoft studio that was, of course, famously made more than 20 years ago for Tom Clancy games that they don't really do anymore. So they're kind of going back to the well, which I think is neat. So I'm more interested, I think, than you guys in what they might show off. But in looking at the list of games that they have on their site, there's a lot of shit here too that I couldn't care less about. And so we'll have to kind of separate the wheat from the chaff, and we'll do that. And I've noticed here on this list that game Skull and Bones is on here. So yeah, they're going to be talking about that soon. And by the way, we did have someone write in, Junt wrote into us and said, "Dear CCD, with Ubisoft set to shutter multiplayer functionality for older generation titles this September, I worry about the future of game preservation. Two of the games being affected are Splinter Cell Blacklist and Ghost Recon Future Soldier. What do you all think companies have planned in the future with their vast libraries of older games? Will the new era of PlayStation Plus usher in a solution via PS3 emulation? If that puzzle is not solved, how many of these games are not included will be scrounging disc copies of Mod Nation Racers for $80 on eBay in the future? Cheers and stay safe out there." Listen, if you're paying $80 for Mod Nation Racers, you got to really reconsider your entire life. They should call Mod Nation Racers load time the game. What were you going to say?
I was going to say, like, when I saw that game for the first time, I was so excited about it because like the thought of it was like the premise that they showcased was really cool. And definitely. And then I just stopped paying attention for some reason. And I think nobody I knew talked about it. And so it just sort of fell off my radar. But
that was during a period of just insane amounts of second party PS3 exclusives. That came from United Front, who, of course, went on to do Sleeping Dogs, which was awesome. Mm-hmm. And so June here is referencing a list of decommissioned games that Ubisoft put out. And this mostly affects PlayStation 3 in terms of our show. But the following games are losing their online functionality in case you guys are interested. And this may affect your ability to get trophies. And this goes as of September 1st. So Assassin's Creed 2 on PlayStation 3. And these are all PS3 games. Assassin's Creed 3, Assassin's Creed Brotherhood, Assassin's Creed Revelations, Driver San Francisco, Far Cry 3. And that's only the PS3 version because there is a PS4 version of Far Cry 3. Ghost Recon Future Soldier, Rayman Legends, and Splinter Cell Blacklist. These games are all going to lose their multiplayer functionality. It won't matter in some of those games, but it will matter in others. I don't think you can get the Far Cry 3 Platinum without playing online, for instance. So if you're interested in that, check those out as well. If you've been waiting for 14 years to play Assassin's Creed 2 on PlayStation 3, now's the time. Speaking of people being and doing their showcases and all of the rest, I just wanted to say Tokyo Game Show is happening in September, as it always does. I got to go twice in my own life, and it is a really unique and interesting show. Always an interesting a grouping of companies there. And so here are the big events according to, or the big companies going to the event, rather, from Push Square. And Konami, THQ Nordic, Capcom, Koei, Tecmo, Square Enix, Sega and Atlas, and Bandai and Namco. But it seems like PlayStation, according to Push Square, will have a limited presence. I'll be interested to see if anything interesting happens at TGS. Waiting for one of these shows. I don't think it's going to be Gamescom. I don't think it's going to be TGS, but one of these shows, it might be the new E3 that's coming next year. I think we'll pop a little more than we expect, and we'll have more news out of it. I'm still waiting for that. I know Chris misses that cycle a lot. It certainly gives us the route for a 5-hour show that I know you guys all want really bad. Okay. Let's get into some other news here. I saw this from the NPD Group. This comes from Matt Piscatella, who has blocked me on Twitter. I have no idea. I have no idea why I'm blocked on Twitter by Matt Piscatella. But he's an analyst and a longtime analyst at NPD Group. And of course, for people that don't know, the NPD Group tracks American software and hardware sales for our industry. So a good gauge of how things are doing in the biggest market in the world. And he says in part, quote, U.S. consumer spending on video game hardware, content, and accessories is now projected to reach $55.5 billion in 2022, a decline of 8.7% when compared to 2021. And he talks about some predictions later that I'll get into. But the basic driver, if people want to read this piece of news, is that I think we can all feel this collective shrinking of the games industry right now. Feels like fewer games are coming out. Feels like fewer people are playing games. And that's not just a feeling. It's true. And a lot of that, I think, comes from the post-COVID, post-pandemic loosening of subscriptions, consoles, games, and all the rest. But I thought I'd share some interesting projections from him. First of all, NPD projects the following 10 games to be the 10 best-selling games in the United States by the end of the year. And these are in alphabetical order. Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2, Elden Ring, God of War Ragnarok, Gotham Knights, Horizon Forbidden West, Lego Star Wars The Skywalker Saga, Madden NFL 23, NBA 2K23, and the Pokemon Legends game Arceus and Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. And then here are some predictions they make as well, which is that Switch will outsell PS5 and Xbox Series X this year. Xbox Series will be the only console hardware platform to show dollar sales growth. Hardware shortages will continue. I thought you'd like this one, Dustin. Elden Ring will finish as 2022's best-selling premium game in the US market, marking only the third time since 2009 that it's not a Call of Duty game.
Dang.
And it says, despite Elden Ring leading the individual titles charts, Call of Duty will remain the US market's best-selling premium gaming franchise for the 14th consecutive year. And that everything will shrink in the market except for subscriptions. So good news for Microsoft and Game Pass. Just wanted to share any of that information. Anything stick out to you there, Dustin, that you wanted to expound on before we move on?
The Elden Ring thing is cool. I don't know at this point. It's surprising overall, but now that we've seen the success of the game, it's like it almost is like, well, yeah, that's if it's going to do it, now's the time. Like it's just amazing thinking about that, or we'll just say From Software's Souls games going from a niche thing that Sony wouldn't even want to publish, and so Atlas came in, and it was kind of looked at as this strange new third-person action game that it is so difficult that very few people would want to check it out, to the evolving over the past decade and now becoming a huge mainstream success. So shout out From Software and Hideteki Miyazaki, the GOAT.
And Chris, I'll throw it over to you with this information from the PlayStation blog. Typically we put this in the show, but I feel like it's just better to read from it so we can be a little looser. They released, as they always do, their monthly sales charts for top downloads. This one is for June of 2022. The Quarry is the best-selling game on PS5, and TMNT, Shredder's Revenge, is the best-selling game on PS4. However, you can tell how influential sales are on the rest of the sales figures, because number 2 on PS5 is Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order, and then a bunch of sports games. Grand Theft Auto 5, of course, at number 5. DNF Duel sneaking in, number 15. And nothing really interesting going on elsewhere. How do you feel about The Quarry being the best-selling game? I suppose not a huge surprise since nothing else is coming out.
Yeah, it makes sense. It's like the one thing that came out that looked AAA. Like at least it commands a certain authority when a game that looks like that comes out in the middle of a drought, especially one that's pretty popular with streamers. I saw a lot of streamers playing The Quarry. Like, it was a pretty huge thing. Like, people were going through their runs and screaming at character deaths in very PewDiePie ways. So it makes sense. It very much makes sense that game kind of exploded a little bit. There's not much to play, so not super surprising.
I agree. It's slow, but it's like I said, it's not your imagination. It really isn't your imagination. But I think this is more manageable. Let us get into the lull. We said on Sacred Symbols Plus that hasn't been released yet that we'll probably long for these times soon, because 2023 and 2024 are going to be just total chaos. Like we're gonna have chaos. We're gonna have moments where we're gonna have to make decisions. Like we have no decisions to make right now. It was a no-brainer. The Quarry popped up and I'm like, bought it. I didn't even think about spending $70 on a game that's really not worth $70 now. A year from now, I should say, I think we might be in a very different situation, especially with a particular delay that we'll talk about later. But let's move on. I want to talk next briefly about Crisis Core Reunion, because this remake, and I think we can kind of say that more confidently now, this remake of the 2008 PSP classic Final Fantasy VII Crisis Core looks like it's going to be much more reworked than we thought it would be. This was first indicated, Dustin, with a tweet from the Final Fantasy VII official Twitter account and other social media feeds, where they put out a list of 5 updates for the game with screenshots. The game looks beautiful, by the way. I think it looks, the PSP version wouldn't be as aesthetically pleasing even if it was up-res as this looks. It just looks really good. But they say improved camera and character movements, optimized UI, a new menu-based battle system. That's what stuck out to me. That I didn't really like that. New background music arrangements, and full VO added to scenes that were previously text only. And they keep reiterating this winter. So we think probably early 2022 or 2023, I would say. However, they later published this longer thing on their website that goes all into the story and the characters and all of the rest, where it kind of positions itself. It shows different comparisons of the screenshots. There's one in particular of Zach where you can just see the massive overhaul to the game. I know we touched on this a little bit last week, but I wanted to ask you, especially in light of the fact that it looks like they're going to make, and they say here, Crisis Core Final Fantasy VII Reunion uses a combat system that combines command-based systems with action gameplay. Massive improvements to the controls and camera have evolved the action to create an even more thrilling experience than the original game. I'm wondering if this news makes you more or less excited about Final Fantasy VII Reunion, which is going to be a pretty big game for them in the shadow of the not only the release of Final Fantasy 16, of course, but Final Fantasy 7 Part 2.
Right. I wonder just that it sounds like when they say menu based, but it's action menu based, that I wonder if it's more in line with something like Kingdom Hearts or Final Fantasy VII Remake, where they have like a small menu in the corner that you can kind of tab through and select different abilities. I don't have anything to compare it to since I never played the original Crisis Core, but so it's not really a negative or a positive for me. I mean, everything I'm seeing from this game just looks amazing. People really do got to go. If you go to the Square Enix blog post or whatever, where you see some of the comparison shot is just really like crazy. It's way more than just an upscale. It's clearly, like you said, more of a remake. And so, yeah, I personally don't have any problem with them changing the battle system, but I'm curious about people that are very familiar with this game or really love this game, if those changes will bother them. I would imagine it would be an improvement, but sometimes that always isn't the case.
Chris, is this an attractive game to you as someone who looks for more action-oriented products? Are you interested in this prequel story to Final Fantasy VII?
I'm definitely more interested than I think I would be if it was strictly turn-based. Although, like we've talked a little bit recently, although I'm not sure in a main show that like I am kind of coming around on turn-based stuff because I'm finding more stuff that appeals to me a little bit more, like a Dragon being specifically the most recent one. But I mean, this game just looks cool to me. Like it doesn't look like the visual clutter that. And I know that you guys are really excited for the next Final Fantasy, but when I look at it, like there's so many particles flying around that it looks like really disorienting to me.
What do you mean?
Fuck you,
Sorry,
Chris. How can you not like my most anticipated game? I can't even believe we do this show with you still.
It looks cool. I think I like the clean aesthetic of it. There's something really appealing to me, even about just retro aesthetics being kind of redone, that there's still a simplicity to them that I really appreciate. And it does look cool. I think I'm definitely going to check this one out.
Yeah, I'm excited. I wish that I believed it would come out this year. Maybe it will. We'll talk about Forspoken in a little while. Maybe that frees up some space for Square Enix, but I just don't feel like it will. But that would be nice. I'm looking forward to it. Can't wait to play it. Crisis Core Reunion comes out this winter. Sometimes you want to stay ahead of the game with bills. I totally get it. I'd rather have a clear ledger than a full one, no doubt, and who doesn't want to knock out those pesky costs as quickly as you can? Well, if you bank with Chime's award-winning banking app, which you can find out more about at chime.com/sacred, you could potentially gain access to your regular paycheck up to 2 days early, so you can begin sniping your obligations. Chime is an accessible suite of banking options, all wrapped up in an app that's especially good for people who need basic services or are getting started in the adult world of finance. You can set up checking and savings accounts with Chime, and you can even get a debit card or credit card that can allow you to interact with digital storefronts, pay subscription costs, and even build your all-important credit. But one of the coolest things Chime offers is the ability to literally get paid 2 days earlier than normal. If you use their direct deposit functionality with your place of employment, they'll give you access to funds before your company has even paid you, a sign of trust between banker and bankee. So if you're feeling anxious about nagging bills or simply want to get ahead of the game while still remaining financially responsible, consider banking with Chime at chime.com/sacred. Their app is used by millions, and their checking and savings accounts and debit and credit cards are a totally solid way to dip your toes into basic banking services that all adults should be taking advantage of. So what are you waiting for? Hopefully not your paycheck. Get started with Chime today. Applying for a free account takes less than 2 minutes. Get started at chime.com/sacred. That's chime.com/SACRED. Again, that's chime.com/sacred. Banking services and debit card provided by the Bancorp Bank or Stride Bank N.A., members FDIC. Early access to direct deposit funds depends on payer. Shout out to Feels, the amazing CBD brand that you can learn more about right now at feels.com/symbols. So what is CBD? CBD stands for cannabidiol, an extract from the marijuana plant. A cousin to THC, CBD's approach is much more muted, but very effective, especially for those with specific needs. And Feels makes CBD available in what I think is the best way to take it, as a liquid tincture. So what can Feels CBD do for you? Well, quite a bit, as it turns out. By simply taking some Feels CBD with a dropper and placing it under your tongue, you can wipe away a day's stress and anxiety, find better sleep, and even escape from physical aches and pains. CBD has been growing so much in popularity over the years because it really does work. And as someone who has used lots and lots of CBD and THC products, Feels' CBD is the highest quality cannabidiol I've ever encountered, and it's worked countless times for me, especially if I was feeling anxious or needed to fall asleep after sometimes hours of tossing and turning. And I really believe it can work for you, because why wouldn't it? It works for so many people around the world. But I totally understand if CBD can be intimidating, which is why I'm pleased to alert you, dear listeners, to Feels' slick customer service operation, which helpfully guides you through the process, alerts you to the products that sound best for you and what you're looking for, and can take care of you stem to stern on your CBD journey. Heck, they may even steer you towards their handy and discreet CBD mints, though I'm a tincture guy through and through. Feels has helped me sleep, it's helped clear my head, it's helped me stay calm and stem off anxiety, and it can do all of that and more for you too. All you have to do is try for yourself. So start feeling better with Feels, my friends. Become a member today by going to feels.com/symbols. That's feals.com/SYMBOLS. And you'll get 50% off your first order with free shipping. That's feels.com/symbols to become a member and get 50% automatically taken off your first order with free shipping. Again, for high quality, perfectly legal CBD that can help you be your best, go to feels.com/symbols. I wanted to acknowledge a trio, or actually 4 games that have all been given release dates or release windows. Thought these would be most interesting for Dustin, although you can, of course, chime in as well, Chris, if you want. One of these games, am I crazy, or did you recommend that game Inscription?
I did.
And
yes.
So that card game is coming to PC, is migrating from PC to PS4, according to Push Square. And we know that because it has a games rating leak. And I think since then, PlayStation Blog has actually officially announced it.
Right.
So what do you think? Inscription's coming to PS4.
Yeah. So to be totally upfront, I did not finish Inscription because the game, I mean, this will be a pro to some people. It was kind of a con to me. It changes a lot throughout playing it, and I found that I didn't like the latter half as much. But despite that, I can still highly recommend it to people that are into card games. This is probably the most unique video game card game I've ever played. It has like this horror quality to it that it's not scary, but it's extremely creepy. And it's like, that's my favorite line to walk, where it's like, it's not trying to jump out and scare me. Like, I don't need to feel on edge when I play it, but I feel maybe a little uneasy. And so I'm happy to see this move over. I'm unsure about card games on consoles, just because I feel like the precision of a mouse is the preferred way. But if that's your only option, then this is a great way to play it. And who knows, it might be totally fine. So either way, if you are mildly interested in this game, I would highly recommend at least looking into it a little further, but not too far, because you're going to want to experience a lot of these things for yourself. This is a game that you could get spoiled very easily. So cool to see it coming over. And I think that they managed that as an exclusive. I don't know if I saw that that's Xbox as well. Like, there's some kind of deal going on there.
Interesting. Yeah, this was part of...
Let me make sure.
Shuhei Yoshida posted on PlayStation Blog 7 links to 7 new previews for indie games coming to PlayStation. They look pretty good. That was the one that stuck out to me, though, because I know you talked about that game on the show, so I might check it out. We'll see. I like card games. I just don't play them very often. I liked them a lot when I was a kid in person, but they're expensive to play, obviously, when you're a kid. I wanted to also just note that Square Enix revealed that Valkyrie Elysium has a release date. Action RPG comes in September. I think it's specifically September 29th. It'll be on both PS4 and PS5. This is, of course, the follow-up and the the third Valkyrie game. Valkyrie Profile and Valkyrie Profile 2 were PS1 and PS2 games respectively from Tri-Ace. Tri-Ace is, of course, working right now on Star Ocean, so they're not making this game. I'm not entirely sure who's making this game. Who is making it?
Colin, I got to chime in here just because there's a new trailer out, and I watched it, and I was much more impressed with this trailer than the debut one, to the point where when I saw you list this, I was like, oh, that's that cheap Valkyrie Elysium game that seems like it might not be so good. But I just checked out this trailer since it was new, and I was like, man, this game looks way, way more interesting and way better. So
it does look great.
If you cast judgment already on this game, I highly recommend checking out this trailer because I think the pre-order went out and there's like a steelbook, which I broke my rules and pre-ordered it because the steelbook looks cool, but if the reviews end up being horrible, I might cancel it. But I just wanted to lock it in just in case.
I also wanted to note that another Square Enix game, the Diofield Chronicle, which I was pretty excited about. It doesn't look great, though. Comes out September 22nd on PS4, PS5. It looks a little more like XCOM than Final Fantasy Tactics. It's not grid-based or anything like that. You can go to Push Square if you guys want. There's like some gameplay there. However, they are going to put in early August, a demo up on PlayStation Network. The demo will connect to the full game, so you'll be able to try it for yourself and see if you like it or not. And I might, that's a rare move for me, but I might actually do that because I just don't know. Like, I want to like this game, and I want to support new strategy role-playing games and tactical role-playing games, but I just don't know. Finally, I also wanted to note that our buddies over at Q Games, Dylan Cuthbert, wrote on PlayStation Blog that the Tomorrow Children Phoenix Edition has a release date and will come out September 6th. So congratulations to them. They are, of course, reviving the abandoned 2015 PS4 game, The Tomorrow Children, and removing all the microtransactions and all the rest. So that's pretty exciting as well. Congratulations to them. Guys, I have to ask you about Yuji Naka because he's still going off. Yuji Naka, of course, famous for his work on Sonic and the head of Sonic Team. Now, Dustin's favorite game, Balan Wonder World,
right,
was his most recent project. And he apparently, as we've learned since the game came out, was removed as the director of the game late in development. He has since apparently sued Square Enix in Japan, and he's not being quiet. This is fucking weird. I think this is truly weird. He tweeted out on July 5th, "Happy birthday, Knights." Now, of course, Knights was a famous Saturn 3D game. So all three of the companies at the time were approaching 3D in different ways and came up with different solutions. I always like talking about it and examining it. Nintendo was doing kind of Mario 64, this open world-ish, much more agency over your experience, but it was pretty ugly, polygonal, not a lot of texture work. Then you had something like Crash Bandicoot that was much more guided, much prettier, but wasn't really an open 3D game. And then you had something like Knights, which was more on rails-ish, more like flying through rings and shit like that. And it's fun. I like it. But he tweeted out, "Happy birthday, Knights." 26 years ago, Knights was announced at this Sega Saturn new software presentation. Bomberman and Enemy Zero were announced together, blah, blah, blah. And people noticed that in this picture that he posted, someone is just like, on your very basic picture editing software on your phone, like it's just blacked out. Someone is just blacked out. And it's hysterical because this apparently is Naoto Oshima, who has worked with Naga since Team Sonic in the beginning, in the early to mid 90s, and apparently like betrayed him at some point. And so he scratched him out of this picture. I just had to ask, and people can go catch up more about this, but it's hysterical that this happened. And he said, people were bringing it up, and he said, "How would you feel if you were suddenly removed from a game that you had worked on for over 2 years, and when you went to court, you found out that they had been talking about me behind my back in court documents and that this is why I was removed from the game?" So, Dustin, speak out. This is your boy, Yuji Naka. This is your game. This is your game, and this is your boy. So you've claimed him. You've claimed him.
I guess you're right. I have claimed him. So
what do you think?
Yeah, I find this absolutely hilarious. This is a top tier 10 out of 10 tweet to just have the balls to just go and scratch out the photo and not even think twice about it. I think that is like really, really funny. But obviously it's not a funny situation he's in.
It's not a laughing matter.
It's not a laughing matter that he's going to court and was betrayed by his friend. that definitely sucks. So I don't want to make light of that, but that move is absolutely hilarious. And there's always, I think last time we brought this up, there's like this question of he really wants to put the blame on Square Enix that he didn't get time to fully finish the game, but there's clearly something very wrong at the core of Balan that I don't think him being at the helm the entire time would have fixed. But I don't know. Maybe he is a miracle worker and could have reversed the reverse draw distance. Who knows? Maybe was his he was ready to go to work the next day. Be like, maybe not on this. And they're like, you're out. And so it's that way. History was made. So
it's not a laughing matter, but it certainly is it's at least a smirking matter, you know?
Yeah.
Like at least a chortle.
I was going to say it's not a laughing matter, but it is a laughing matter.
Right?
Yeah. Like we can, it's the behind the scenes shit is interesting. We'll maybe never know the answer, but the game itself, like Chris, you made famous the reverse draw distance. I mean, this is a new revolutionary feature in Balan Wonderworld.
It just stuck out so deeply to me when I saw, like, I couldn't believe what I was saying. But there's something so incredibly brazen about, like, not only like it's one thing to like maybe like if you really wanted to like the pettiest, I have to imagine like, okay, if I were to do something like this, how would I do it? Like, how would I share a picture with somebody that I didn't like? It's like maybe I would like smudge their face a little so like their face wasn't super recognizable or something. He just straight up, like, just like a Vanta black void in the middle of the picture.
Right.
That is not, you can't not see it. Like, it sticks out more than anything else in the photo does. I think that's hilarious. That is so damn funny. Because it's not subtle. It's like, I want you to know that I cut you out of this.
Yeah, it's very, I don't know. I'm no expert in Japanese culture. It seems kind of forward, right? It seems like a pretty forward thing to do.
It seems very American to me.
We saw all these disintegrations of all these relationships, right? Capcom and Keiji Inafune, Hideo Kojima and Konami and all this. And they were never doing petty ass shit. I wish they were, because that would have been awesome.
Do you remember when they had to airbrush George's boss into the photo?
Yeah. And he was like a cartoon character.
That's what it reminds me of.
That's good shit. I love it. All right. The final thing I wanted to bring up before we get into what we're playing is one of the 7 aforementioned PlayStation blog posts that were highlighted by Shuhei Yoshida was thankfully for Sea of Stars. And this is awesome because Sea of Stars looks great, but it was never confirmed for PlayStation until today. We assumed that it would be because they kept saying it was coming to PC, Switch, and unconfirmed consoles. So it would just kind of a no-brainer. But for people that don't know, Sabotage is the studio that did The Messenger. And The Messenger is a wonderful, wonderful game. If you haven't played it, it's an awesome game. Highly recommended. Sea of Stars takes place apparently in the same universe, but it's a totally different kind of game. If Messenger was kind of like Ninja Gaiden meets Metroidvania, Sea of Stars is kind of like Chrono Trigger. And I highly recommend people go check it out. It looks beautiful. It sounds awesome. I cannot wait to play it. However, they did say something in the PlayStation blog post that I was disappointed in, which is that they one of their guidelines, they said for our very own turn-based RPG, we started with a few simple guidelines. There would be seamless transitions from navigation to combat, no random encounters, and no grinding. Combat is obviously a big one, so let's dive deeper, and then they go into it. I'm like, that sounds good, but I love that shit. No random encounters. I love random encounters. Grinding, that's part of the deal, man. Because you got to grind for your equipment, you got to kind of level yourself up. So I'm interested to see how they balance it all out, but there is no denying that this game looks fucking awesome. I wanted to shout it out.
Yeah.
Any thoughts before we move on?
I like the idea of the no random encounters. The way they put it here, I mean, we'll see how it actually turns out. They put it in the blog post. No random encounters means every fight is designed manually to offer a unique pattern of enemies. It can be analyzed and optimized by the savvy Solstice warrior.
It sounds like Chrono Trigger. Yeah. Like, you know, like you run into an enemy in Chrono Trigger, you see the enemy, you run into the enemy, and then it creates the floor for you, like right in real time that you fight.
Right.
On. That doesn't sound very revolutionary to me. It's just random encounters have a bad rap. I don't get it. I love random encounters. Just
yeah.
I think it's from Pokemon. I think it's from Pokemon when you would just like wander around for like, it would take you 40 minutes to just walk across a simple patch of grass because every 2 seconds you'd be just harassed by a Zubat. for no goddamn reason.
It is true that
it is
an arbitrary thing in some way. It makes every game that it's in much longer, but that's kind of the idea.
Yeah. I think this looks awesome. Like, this is definitely like a Switch game for me. Like, if I were to play it, like this feels like right at home on like on something that I don't know why, but like, and this might be like really stupid, but like I feel a little silly playing like pixel games on a big TV. Like, it almost feels like overkill and like almost like too much. Like, I like the small screen experience for those stuff. I have so many on my PC, but I still have Chasm on my PC, and I still play that every now and again. So it's just like, this is definitely one that I'm probably gonna check out just because the art of it is really gorgeous.
Well, that's why Chasm was great on Vita, and that's really where Vita is missed, I think. Because I agree with you. People were saying with us with Super Parallels of Baking, this would have been so great on Vita. I'm like, yeah, no shit. We would have loved to play that game on Vita, but I agree. I'm playing Wild Arms, which we'll talk about momentarily, and I'm playing it on my what is it, 65-inch OLED TV or whatever, and it's just like beautiful. But you really see it almost better than it's meant to be seen, which is
right. Yeah,
maybe
exactly.
not to its benefit. Okay. Well, speaking of that, let's get into what we're playing. Chris, let's start with you because you're playing Nobody Saves the World. I'm really eager to see what you think of it.
Yeah. So, I mean, you played this a while ago, and I don't know what brought it to my attention. I think maybe it was on Game Pass or something.
It was on Game Pass. It launched exclusively console, exclusive to Xbox on Game Pass.
Yeah. So I was checking that out, and I was like, you know what? I'll give it a shot. I like Drinkbox. I like their aesthetic. It reminds me a lot of Behemoth from back in the day when they were making like Alien Hominid and Castle Crashers and Battle Block Theater. It has that irreverent style that I really enjoy. And I wasn't sure how I would feel about it because this isn't typically the kind of game I play. I don't typically like dungeon crawlers. I don't typically find myself engrossed in these types of RPGs. But I gotta say, man, this is so much fun and so enjoyable and so digestible, and so there's so much you can do in such a short period of time. It really nails the Borderlands kind of like checkbox style gameplay where it's like you can focus on like, okay, I'm gonna use this form to do this, and I'm gonna level up, and it's really paced perfectly. Like, you always feel like you're progressing in some way, and nothing feels like it never feels like you're wasting time or you're being played in some way that it's like, oh, this part of the game is made to stretch things out. Like, it never feels that way, even though that's what kind of dungeon crawlers are. There's some like roguelike elements where dungeons kind of change if you die in them. So like, you can't just memorize dungeons over and over again. I think it's a lot of fun, and the mixing and matching of different abilities to different forms is really awesome. I had no idea what the hell the egg was. I unlocked the egg recently, right, where you just become an egg, and the benefit of it is like you get this like insane speed boost, but if you hit a wall, you take a little bit of damage. And like all of these like little things, like there's like a crying slug, and you can like mix and match. I love the rat. Like, I really love the rat gameplay. As somebody who's excited for Plague Tale, I guess that makes sense.
Yeah,
but just the little animation of the teeth chomping like sends me every time I see it. Like, there's something
it's really cute. Yeah, definitely.
And I think the story is really charming. I think there's the writing is really amusing. Some of it's like, I saw this one joke that was like, I'm like a mage and I have over 300 confirmed magics or whatever the fuck, and I'm like, it's a bit old, but like, fair enough. But there's this
dude, Drinkbox loves their memes.
Yeah,
that
fair
was
enough.
The thing in Guacamelee.
No, I liked Guacamelee. Like, and I still like this too. Like, there's specifically, I was in my horse form, and I spoke to a golden horse who I apparently fell in love with. So that's something that I'm gonna have to wrestle.
I know,
with.
It's so fun. There's so many weird, quirky things in that game.
It's it's the longest interaction in this game so far that I've had with another character is this completely missable horse that I just decided to speak to on a whim, and it's this like really long, like Romeo and Juliet story with this fucking horse. And I'm just like, it's really amusing. It's really fun. I've been on just this really addictive loop with it, where like I'll play it on my phone sometimes, and I'll just kind of jump in for a little bit. It's just it's a fun way to spend a really long PlayStation, or just to fuck around with in like, little chunks, which is something that I feel like I need right now. as I'm not at home.
No, it's a perfect game to play it that way. That's why I played it too, all the way through. I didn't end up platinuming it. I thought I would, but I really did love it. And I like just like you said, the hodgepodge of characters in the game where you have like the knight and it's like, oh, okay, yeah, you get it. But then it's like the zombie. And
yeah,
it makes it so that, which I think is really clever, where it's endlessly, you can make a sequel and sequels to this endlessly if you wanted to, if you found something that worked, because it's so ridiculous that there would be an endless array of characters you can pull in. So shout out to them. I love Drinkbox. Glad you're enjoying it.
Yeah, super good.
Dustin, what are you playing?
So I've started Resident Evil 3 Remake, and I was trying to set my expectations right because I knew that a lot of people thought that it was not as good as Resident Evil 2. And I'm not terribly far into the game, but I already can feel some aspects that I don't like. In particular, the few interactions I've had with Nemesis have only exclusively been annoying and not like fun, because in 3 Remake they introduced this ability where you can press R1 as you move to kind of dodge out of the way, which is kind of necessary because I'm pretty sure Nemesis moves a lot faster than Mr. X does, and so it's necessary for you to dodge around him if you can, and I cannot get the dodge right. There are times where I'm like, man, this is like the right moment. And then like, I don't know if it's like a hitbox thing or something, but I'll get hit anyway. And I'm like, this is really actually quite annoying and not super fun.
The dodge is really janky. Yeah, that's something that I even remember very specifically.
It's very janky, but the aspects I'm enjoying of it is that I think Jill seems like a really cool character. And I like the setting being the city instead of just the like just a singular location as like the mansion in the first game or the police station along with its kind of surrounding underground and stuff like that. I like to see that more kind of expansive aspect of it. But overall, it's been fine so far. Was a little disturbed by this part with a parasite that like it injects itself into Jill's mouth that felt like really creepy and gross.
Yeah.
I literally, seriously, I was like, that was a bit, it kind of reminded me of, in a different way, when the Tomb Raider remake, how they had those really bizarrely gory and it felt like almost sexualized deaths with the way that she would scream and stuff. Maybe that was just me, but that moment where it was a little tentacle anime-ish for me. And I know I'm the anime guy here, but there's boundaries. Okay.
Yeah.
So overall, though, I'm going to keep playing that and finish that up. And then I'm going to take a break from Resident Evil because I think I want to play 4 more towards the end of the year when we get closer to the remake. Maybe I'll check out 0 or Code Veronica since I just picked those up. And then finally, I beat and platinumed Ape Escape. And it's interesting that in the later part of the game, you hear more of the voice acting. And not that it's a PlayStation 1 game. You kind of just take it for what it is, but like it is like pretty laughably. It's awesome. It's so awesome. It's so bad and so awesome. But overall, man, it was over and over like nostalgia blast. Like when you get a new gadget, I'm like, oh man, I forgot about this gadget. I forgot about this interaction. Like there's a battle towards the end of the game. Are people going to care about spoilers?
No.
I just won't.
No, for
Ape Escape came out more than 20 years ago. Yeah.
There's a part where your friend and brainwashed Nemesis now just tries to run you over in this like big car, like over and over again. He just tries to run you over, and there's like big robots and stuff at the end. And so I had a fantastic time playing through this. I got to say, even though I know we already talked about it, the PS1 implementation on PS4 or on PS4 and PS5 is very good. The save states really work well. The games look really clean. They're NTSC, of course. And I'm just very pleased with the rollout. I think that the only real disappointment is just the lack of trophies on certain games is kind of a downer. And I just really wish there was more, but I get it because they're going to roll out more. And so I'm excited to see what comes next. A little side note, just because I found this really interesting and I wanted to put this out as a PSA. And some of you already probably know this. I downloaded Ape Escape 2 because it's part of the premium service, which was one of the PS2 on PS4 games that they put out a few years ago. It is horrible on PlayStation 5. There's something about the emulation that it does not work quite right. It's not that it's not playable, but different like UI elements and parts of the game will just like flash and look weird and corrupted. And I just can't believe that Sony would just put that out and leave it up. Like it does warn you that it's like, oh, this game might not quite play right on your PS5. But when you have a classics section of your service and this is one of your games, you might want to go in there and fix that, because the experience is like not good. I just was surprising to me that we've had so much. I have not had any problem with PS4 games backwards compatibility, but something about that emulation is real off. So if you have a PS4 and you want to play Ape Escape, that's the place to do it. Or Ape Escape 2 specifically. PS5, the real gross. I don't know what's going on.
I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure that I don't know if it affected PS2 as much as it did previous generations, but I'm fairly certain that the PS2 version of Ape Escape that is available on PS5 is the PAL version. I don't know if that makes a difference as far as...
You're correct.
Yeah, I know.
Because it says Sony Europe at the beginning. I noticed that.
Yeah. Because I know... Because I've heard that like, oh, the PAL version is kind of fucky, but I wasn't actually sure if that actually affected Xbox and PS2 as much as, PS1 and before. But if that's true, then that would explain, something. Because Ape Escape 1 runs perfectly fine, the NTSC version. Like it's... Yeah. I'm glad you enjoyed it, though. That's like one of my favorite games ever. So it's nice to hear that it holds up to other people.
Right. Yeah, that was like, it was really probably one of my first favorite games growing up. Like I really liked Pokemon Yellow and I really liked Ape Escape and Metal Gear Solid, stuff like that. Those were like my first favorites. And so it was just really awesome. And I'm so excited for the future of that PS1 Classics library, where else they're going to go with it. I hope that it's not a Nintendo situation where they go pretty hard for a few months and then eventually it's like, here's a NASCAR pinball or something, like some like random ass like game, because that's Nintendo's just totally kind of abandoned that. It's annoying because it's a subscription and people are paying for it. You want content, so hopefully Sony can do better.
For me, I've just been playing Wild Arms still. I just haven't had very much time to play, so I'm probably like a little less than 20 hours into the game now. I'm really enjoying it, just trying to find an hour or two a night to sit down and play it. I also sat down a little bit with Wily Wars on Switch, which was a Mega Drive game. It was out in the US as a Genesis title, but it was via Sega Channel. It was this weird thing back in the day, but I've never really messed around with Wily Wars, which is a remake of and remixing of Mega Man 1, 2, and 3 on Genesis. And so try to play that a little bit. It's cool, but I got to like remap the controls or something. I don't know. The Switch controller, it's just so alien to me. I don't get why you would have the default set up the way they do for certain games. So I want to mess around with that, but that's it. Let's move into the news. Big piece of news we should get into now. Number one, after endless hypothesizing and wondering, including on this very show, we're pleased to relay word that God of War Ragnarok finally has a release date. Announced in late 2020 for release on PS4 and PS5 in 2021, Ragnarok will arrive about a year later than expected at least. It comes to both platforms on November 9th. The release date was announced alongside a new CG trailer called Father and Son, as well as the reveal of the game's extensive collector's editions. Here's what you need to know about all of that. If you pre-order the base game, you will receive cosmetic armor for both Kratos and Atreus. That's how you say his name, right? Atreus?
Yeah, Atreus.
Yeah. The game itself costs $60 on PS4 and $70 on PS5, and it will cost $10 to transfer from one to the other, so no funny business, like with Horizon Forbidden West. From here, we go to the Digital Deluxe Edition, which includes the game itself, both cosmetic and practical armor and other weapon and attire skins, a digital version of the soundtrack, a mini art book, also digital from Dark Horse, some avatars, and a theme for PlayStation 4. Of course, PlayStation 5 doesn't have themes. The Collector's Edition comes with all of the digital goods from the aforementioned Digital Deluxe Edition, plus physical goods, a steelbook display case with no game, as this version comes with a redemption code instead, a so-called Dwarven dice set, 2-inch versions of the Vanner twins that are supposed to go along with the Holda brothers carvings from the 2018 special edition, and a 16-inch replica of Thor's weapon, what is it? How do you say that? Mjolnir. Finally, the Jotnar edition, the most substantial option, comes with everything from the collector's edition, including all physical and digital goods, plus a 7-inch vinyl soundtrack, a 3-piece pin set, a replica of the Draupnir ring, and a cloth map. The dice set with the collector's edition is Brock's dice instead of the Dwarven dice. God of War Ragnarok, developed by Sony-owned Santa Monica Studio, is the eagerly anticipated follow-up to 2018's God of War reboot on PlayStation 4, widely considered one of the console's most important games. It has sold more than 20 million copies, making it one of the brand's biggest exclusives of all time. God of War was, of course, born out of the same studio in 2005 when the original launched on PS2. It was followed by a sequel on PS2 in 2007, a third game on PS3 in 2010, a spin-off on PS3 in 2013, and some PSP games in there too from Ready at Dawn. What do you think? Chris, let's go to you first. November 9th, we have a release date. You said you predicted November 11th. I believe I predicted November 4th, so you were closer. What do you think?
I think, it makes sense. Like, it's why I assumed that it would be coming around that time. I'm excited for it. I think it looks cool. I want to know what the hell happens. It's been a while since I've played God of War, so I might have to do a rerun of it, or at least maybe brush up a little bit on it. But I'm stoked about it. I'm looking forward to it. I find the nature of how they drop this news quite interesting. And I think there's some questions that get into that.
Oh, yeah. So, all right, let's get into it right now. Paul S. wrote in and said, "Hey, Slittas, is the God of War Ragnarok the weirdest first-party rollout of all time? Consistent calls of 'we'll show you when it's ready' are answered with a tweet linking to a 30-second CGI trailer and some special editions. 4 months from release, and we've seen almost nothing, and Sony Santa Monica has been clearly on the defensive from the jump. It seems like they know any larger announcement will be met with more of the same criticism that Horizon Forbidden West got, so instead they're just avoiding showing anything at all. How close do you think we'll get before we see real gameplay and game content?" So this speaks to what you're talking about, Chris. Go on.
Yeah, I think it's a little weird that they didn't have an event about it. I think it's weird that they kind of just threw it out there with an unceremonious. It's a very unceremonious way to announce a release date, in my opinion. Maybe it doesn't need to be a whole ceremony thing. Maybe you don't need fanfare for a game like God of War. And I would actually argue that maybe it even makes sense for them to not show anything, because if you're going to play, if you're excited about God of War, you're going to play God of War. If you have a PlayStation, chances are you're looking forward to God of War. The original God of War 2018 is free on, and has been free. I think it was even on PS Plus recently, despite it being free on PS5 anyway. So chances are most people who have a PS5, who are tuned into the industry and tuned into like what's new and happening, they're going to play this new game, and they have it on their radar. All they needed to know was the information, when it's coming out. And it is a story-based game, so maybe it does make sense to kind of play it close to I'm actually kind of excited by that, because I do know what this game is going to be. We've seen, I think, enough gameplay to kind of know what we're getting. We are getting a little bit more of the same. We're getting some new stuff. But all in all, I think we have a pretty solid expectation of what this game is going to be outside of the story. And what more that we see out of that is just kind of taking it out of the experience for when we get to it. So I'm actually a little bit more okay with this than I think a lot of people would be. Just because, again, this is a story-based game. And I'd like to go in as blind as possible, quite frankly. And I'm glad they're not pulling the Spider-Man thing, where there's like, I mean, we still have time before November, so who knows? Maybe there'll be like 40 trailers. But I kind of like this approach in some way. I like the understated nature of it. I think it allows the game to kind of sneak up on people in a way that might be beneficial to it, especially given the reception to Forbidden West and some of the criticism that's been levied against the game in recent months.
Yeah, it's very well said, because, well, first of all, from my own taste, I kind of agree with you that I didn't watch the trailer. I only read what I had to on the PlayStation blog. I'm out. Like, yeah, I'm not incredibly excited about God of War Ragnarok. I'm not. I wasn't excited about God of War 2018 either, but I'm obviously going to play it. I liked God of War 2018 a lot. I'll be on Ragnarok the first day it comes out. Happy to buy it. But yeah, I'm totally out on the cycle, and I wonder if it's going to be effective enough, because I do agree with Paul. I think was it Paul? Yeah, he had I thought this was a very keen piece of insight, which was they got roasted with Horizon Forbidden West, and they're like, we're just not doing that again, because it's not really fair to the game, and I understand that. It looking at the animations that are shared between Horizon Zero Dawn and Forbidden West and all of that, and kind of judging the full product, I think misses the forest for the trees and misses a really great game. And they're protective of this game. I'm curious though what they're thinking, because it does seem unceremonious. This is God of War. I mean, God of War, like I said, 20 million copies. 20 million copies. However, Dustin, it seems like what they have said about God of War Ragnarok, according to Benji Sales, friend of the show and guest on the show sometimes on Sacred Symbols Plus, had said that this has done extraordinarily well. In fact, I think the announcement of the release date was the most retweeted Santa Monica tweet ever and stuff like that. So maybe the understated stuff, to Chris's point, is all they need to do. What do you think?
Yeah, there is an angle where you can look at that, where this is probably overall the most anticipated game as it stands right now. This more than probably Call of Duty even, and anything else. Like, clearly they don't necessarily need to say anything, but at the same time, I think I'm in agreement with Chris that you also don't want to give off a bad feeling by not saying anything, which is, I don't know, maybe we are overly analytical about not overly analytical, but we're the ones that are sitting here and analyzing this and taking stuff from it. Whereas like someone who's just kind of passively into games and stuff doesn't really think anything of it. It's like, oh, cool, that's the date. I've seen the trailer. I'm in. So I think that, they clearly, Sony's strategies are always continually more elusive and interesting. And so it doesn't surprise me that they're kind of seemingly playing some games with this one. But the only other thing that I really wanted to point out that I saw a lot of people complaining about in our Discord, and I don't blame them, is the Steelbook in the special edition with no game inside of it, just a code. And the reason they're doing this is so they don't need to have two SKUs of the special edition for PS4 and PS5. The one code will unlock the PS4 and the PS5 version of the game. And so I think that they did something similar to this with Gran Turismo, where you got the PS5 disc, but you got a code for a version of the game on PlayStation 4 that you could not upgrade. So they probably are thinking about this and thinking, well, we know that people will just sell that code to the millions of PS4 users out there for cheap or whatever. Let's not do that. I don't know. It kind of defeats the purpose to me to have a game case if there's no game in it. It's
just, here's what's weird to me, because I think you're halfway there. And actually, Jose Mendoza wrote in about this. He said, hey, CDC, with the new collector's edition of God of War announced, I'm starting to see a trend. Why does Sony insist on not adding a physical copy of the game to their collector's editions? The same thing happened with Forbidden West and almost drove me not to buy it. When will the madness stop? Please, for the love of God, include physical games in your collector's edition of the game, Sony. I remember when this first happened during the PS3 era with games, and everyone was like, what is going on here? And it just never stopped. And I do find it weird, but I think, Dustin, that you might be a little off the trail of why this is happening. I think it's actually maybe even simpler than that. I don't think they care about the SKUs, because they could easily say it's only for PS5 or whatever. I think the problem is that the games are not gold and printed in time for them to bundle it all together. And instead of leaving the boxes open and everything, like we saw them unbox the collection already. We just saw them do it. Now that could be because they released a video of that. Now that could just be, a mock-up, which I'm sure it is. But what I'm saying is that this game will go gold in like October, and then it'll be sent to the printers. But by this time, I don't think they can get the games into the cases. They can preset the codes, especially because it's a first-party game, so that they know these codes will lead to the game. And I really think that's the reason why they do it. And I think that sucks, because I think what you have to say, like, we got to just get it all together at the last second. We got to go through and put these games into the boxes. Like, you got to. Who the hell wants the steel case? But the thing is that they know, because none of you have any self-control out there, that you're just going to buy this shit anyway. They can give you nothing. It could be a box and they can call it Norse Air, and that shit would sell out. So, and we all know it. So I think that like this is the least of their concerns, but I do think it sucks that they're doing that. And
go ahead. I really wonder, people mocked this, and I understand why, because I think I was in the same camp, but I think about it more now and how I think that the move is to release like you'd have to call it something different, but like bundle all this shit in a box with no game and make it $70 cheaper. And then you can buy this. And then at that point, you can either choose to buy a physical version of the game or you can buy it digitally. And you don't need to, there's none of these weird games. Just like, here's like the God of War Ragnarok celebration kit or something. I don't know.
Just I totally understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
I agree. Like like they should do a thing where it's like make your own special edition or something, like a modular special edition. Because on Kickstarter, for instance, I haven't done it yet, but I'm kickstarting this thing called Operation Recall, which is like these new G.I. Joes from the guys that made G.I. Joe. And when you check out, I'm sure this is common, but I had never seen it on Kickstarter. There's actually like an array of options where it's like, oh, you can actually add this perk and this perk and this perk. And it kind of makes like a modular sort of so you pick one of their tiers, but then you actually make it modular. It's like 1 point A, 1 point B, right. 1 point C, and so on. And I dig that. And I would, if I were a player, like, we had Michael Mumbauer on Sacred Symbols Plus, and he was talking to us about the dagger from Uncharted 2, which is so funny because that is very rare. And I had one of those at IGN and I didn't know it was so rare. I would have maybe stolen it when I left. But he was saying, like, this is a piece of manufacture. It would have been cool, though, if someone's like, well, I don't really give a shit about the knife. I want a Drake statue or this or that. And you kind of have the option. That's more work, but that's cool. And it's the same thing I say. It kind of connects to Xbox's custom controller initiative. Like, that's hard. That probably is really hard and expensive for them to do, but it's cool. That's why they do it. And so, yeah, I would like to see this handled differently, but God of War Ragnarok, I mean, what's our gut instinct? What's our gut feeling? Dustin, let's go to you first on that. November 9. How are you going to be? What's the feeling going to be?
I don't know. I really feel like I'm kind of staying the same opinion as last time we did a gut check, that this game will be really good, but I think overall it will be more of the same. And I think people will be somewhat disappointed because of it. I don't know if disappointed is the right word. I just don't think it's going to light the world on fire like the last one did. I think that it will score slightly less, be a very good game, be in a lot of Game of the Year conversations, of course. But I just don't know the way that they've treated this. Like we said, it just something feels different about it. Something feels a little chaotic. So I'm still very excited to play it. I'll play it day one, but I'm curious about how they're going to wrap it up. How much is going to be different? How much is going to be improved? I'd absolutely love for this to be even better than the first one, and I like it more, but we'll see.
Chris, anything to add before we move on?
Yeah, I think I'm pretty much in 100% agreement with that. I don't think it's going to set the world on fire like 2018 did, just because 2018 they were dealing with such a different, they were dealing with so much different expectations at that point. And I think now that there's something incredible to follow up, I feel like there's a lot more room to fall. I think the story is probably going to be fantastic. I think I imagine there's going to be some minor gameplay tweaks that like contribute to the fact that like, oh, this is new, but I think it is going to feel mostly like more of the same, not necessarily in a bad way. I don't expect like a 9. I expect like maybe mid to low 80s, potentially high 80s. Like, I don't know. It really all depends on, the game that we have yet to play, but
no, that's exactly right. That's exactly right. I feel like I feel insane for almost being skeptical. Like you're going to play it for 5 minutes and realize like, oh my God, like what was I even thinking about or worried about? But there's no doubt, because Dustin, you were saying we're kind of reading the tea leaves. We just don't know anything, and we're kind of analyzing what's out there, and that's all we're doing. And it's different. This is different. And it seems like everything's going to be different moving forward, which is why I think we're so excited to see how they roll out these games beyond God of War. Because I'm eager to almost get beyond God of War Ragnarok, because now we're in the nitty gritty at that point. Now we have no idea what the hell's going on, with the exception of Spider-Man and Wolverine. Well, and I think we can know what to expect from both of those games. Okay. Number 2, Sony-owned studio Sucker Punch, which was founded in 1997 and purchased outright by PlayStation in 2011, has grown over time into one of the brand's most beloved teams. Their Sly Cooper trilogy on PlayStation 2, as well as their infamous trilogy across PS3 and PS4, are some of the most beloved and longingly looked back upon exclusives from their eras. And though Sucker Punch has since gone on to Ghost of Tsushima, which it launched on PS4 as its swan song in 2020, and which it's almost certainly following up with a sequel, many fans wonder if they'll ever return to their earlier IP. The answer, at least for now, seems to be a definitive no. In a strange letter posted to its website, Sucker Punch had two pieces of minor news. The UGC, or user-generated content servers, for 2011's PlayStation 3 game Infamous 2 are going to be moved, and they will be eventually taken down at an unknown point. And PS4's 2014 game Infamous Second Son, which got so-called Cole's Legacy DLC in its Collector's Edition, would be made available for all soon. However, such news no doubt prompted them to tamp down any rumors of wonderings immediately, stating the following in part, quote, "As our games continue to grow in scale and complexity, they require the full attention of our studio. With our focus on our current project, we have no plans to revisit Infamous or Sly Cooper right now, and no other studio is currently working on projects related to those projects either. To those IP either, I'm sorry. These characters are very special and near and dear to our hearts. So while we never say never to reopening those doors down the road, for now, there are no Infamous or Sly Cooper games in development," end quote. This shouldn't come as much as a surprise, but it nonetheless does confirm the lack of intent to return to either franchise, a surprise considering Infamous in particular would have been a wonderful target for a collection on PlayStation 5. Still, at least for the time being, stow your dreams away. Sly Cooper, the popular 3D mascot platformer, spanned 3 games on PlayStation 2 from 2002 through 2005. Indeed, a 4th core game was released in 2013 on PS3 and Vita, Sly Cooper Thieves in Time, which itself teased a 5th game that never came to fruition. However, that game was an external one by Sanzaru, which is now owned by Facebook parent Meta. The Sly Collection, which came to PS3 in 2010, was one of the first collections of its kind, however, and began a trend of re-releasing PS2-era games on PS3 and beyond. As for Infamous, the choice-based superhero games span their own 3 titles, Infamous and Infamous 2 on PS3 in 2009 and 2011, and Second Son in 2014. Chris, let's go to you first. No Infamous, no Sly Cooper. Do you care? This made quite a stir with the audience. And I understand why in some sense, but what do you think of this? Maybe it's just slow news and we're looking for something to talk about, but I felt like this was quite noteworthy.
Nah, man, I'm glad Sly Cooper is dead. I hate him. No, I
hate that motherfucker.
Yeah, I hate that piece of shit.
Fuck that guy.
Yeah, fuck him, specifically that person, the man Sly Cooper. I think I don't know, it doesn't surprise me that like there's not a Sly in development, you know, like that doesn't surprise me. I don't imagine, were people expecting Sucker Punch to really be working on that stuff? I think the main surprise comes from the fact that no one else is, right? That's kind of the thing.
Yeah, I think so. I think that would be most of the surprise. I think some people hold on to this idea that Naughty Dog will go back to Jack and Sucker Punch will go back to Sly, which is, again, I contend that that's a complete waste of time.
Well,
and, it's more the declaration that no one else is doing it too. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, but it also just like I could be wrong, but I can't recall the last time I've ever seen a studio return to a property like this long after like setting it aside. Like maybe Doom is the only one that I can think of, but even Doom, like it never really left Doom. They just sort of left it on hiatus a little bit. They never moved on to something else and was like, this is the new thing. They even tried to make Doom 4 and it was like a mess. And then they rebooted it. So like that doesn't surprise me. I feel like Sly Cooper could work in a modern setting. I feel like the time for that is kind of missed. I think the fact that we still don't have Resistance playable on PS5 is like really astonishing. So I think when it comes to legacy franchises like this not being in the pipeline, it's disappointing, but at the same time, it's kind of par for the course for Sony, especially in the last several years. So I'm not too broken up about it.
How do you feel, Dustin? Are you surprised? Do you have any feelings?
I'm not surprised. I guess the only surprising aspect is that we did have some rumors floating around about a new Sly, not necessarily from Sucker Punch, but in some way, not that I'm a Sly fan. I really I've never played a Sly game. I know very little about this Thievius Raccoonus or whatever his name is, but I'm glad. If I was a Sly fan, I would kind of feel sad and glad at the same time, where it's like, dang it, we're not getting this, but I don't need to wonder if it's happening. Like the official no is actually a kind of a nice change of pace, where it's not like, are we going to, are we not? It's like, no, we're not doing it right now. It's like, okay, well, I can have my expectations in check, but it's we're kind of seeing Sony like just not really care about doing any kind of family related stuff or not even family, but just stuff geared more towards kids. Like they had their obligatory kids game for the launch of PlayStation 5, which is that Sackboy game. And now it's been
and the bundle in as well,
the bundle. Oh yeah. Well,
yeah,
Astros. There was Astro's Playroom and Sackboy, and now it's been kind of just full steam ahead on more games geared towards adults and some that kids would be interested in as well. But I was surprised. I feel like I would have expected to see Astro again at this point. It's clear to me now they're saving him for the launch of PlayStation VR 2 for a new Astros whatever game. So, but yeah, they kind of seem to be not really caring about this, and I don't know. It's a different direction. I wonder if what is the value of Sly now at this point? Obviously, there are many people. Maddie in particular is like one of the biggest outwardly spoken Sly fans, but I don't know like how much of a mind share he has for the general gaming consensus.
Yeah, I'm gonna say something that
like,
might be. I'm gonna say something that might be slightly controversial. I feel like the way that the way that the general public feels about Sly Cooper is probably closer to the way that the general public feels about Tak and the Power of Juju than people would care to admit. I feel like these are like PS2 icons, and they're cool, like it's fun, but at this point there's been so few uses of these IP in the last decade or so that like they've just sort of faded away. And I feel like Crash is real. Crash and Spyro are like one of the few exceptions because they're so nostalgically intertwined. Like they're bordering on Mario territory, where it's like, oh, those are the biggest classics of their day. And I don't think, even if Sly Cooper did literally sell better than Spyro and Crash, I don't know if that's true or not. I still don't think Sly commanded as big of a mind share.
Sly Cooper was never. I would argue Sly Cooper was never the number one mascot platformer, even during its time. I think it would experience that again here, because I think Ratchet and Clank is the more relevant IP. Here's my take on this: is Sucker Punch, when Sly 4 went into development, Sucker Punch wasn't even owned by Sony, and they had no power, I'm sure, inside to control that product at all. I know that they had some interchange with them about lore and shared art and got builds and all of that, but I don't think that they were really a respected part of the process, in that I don't think that they had any say in if it happened or not. In fact, we know that because we know that Sanzaru basically made the game without permission to get a vertical slice to present to Sony to begin with. And their kind of task when they did that was to port the Sly collection to PS3, which, if you platinumed all 3 games, would announce Sly 4. And that was kind of a cool thing. But you got to fast forward now more than 10 years. After Infamous 2 came out in 2011, Sony buys Sucker Punch. Sucker Punch delivers Second Son, which is pretty good, but they deliver Ghost of Tsushima and I think it sounded bad when I was saying it on Sacred Symbols Plus, which isn't out yet, but I was like, Sucker Punch, I don't think anyone really expects very much out of Sucker Punch until more recently. Like I think they were kind of a middling studio in the family. Now they're not. And I'm kind of connecting dots wherein we know Naughty Dog, the most powerful of all their teams, basically unilaterally said, we want The Last of Us remake. We're taking it away from this other team and we're going to finish it ourselves. Now, I say this because we know that Sony, at least a few years ago, was considering reviving Sly Cooper in the form of a cartoon series. And apparently they ordered like 100 episodes of this cartoon series. And obviously it never happened. It fell off, and it was never, I don't think anything really came to fruition about it. But you can imagine, to Dustin's point about these rumors of a Sly Cooper game, that one was in development, that there was this plan maybe several years ago to get Sly Cooper revived. They were going to do a cartoon series. They were going to have a game maybe made by an external developer or whatever. And Sucker Punch might have been like, I don't think so. And while they don't technically and legally have that right, they figuratively have that right, because they're like, well, we're a first party team and that's our franchise. We don't want another team to make another Sly Cooper game. We don't want another team to make another Infamous game. And I'd also argue that neither of those franchises have any place in modern PlayStation. Sly Cooper is just a redundant version of Ratchet and Clank, which is just a redundant version of Astro when you look at it from the vertical of for children, platformers, cute, mascotty, don't need it. Infamous? You have Marvel games. You don't need Infamous. That's the last thing you need is a superhero game about a made up superhero when you have Spider-Man and Wolverine.
Yeah.
So the only surprise to me and the only disappointing thing to me, and I hope that maybe it's not, they don't mean this entirely, is that like get those Infamous games from PS3 on PS4. Like you got to do it. Those games are awesome and you should celebrate them. It doesn't mean you ever have to go back to Infamous. You never have to go back to Infamous. But we need those games to shoot forward. And I hope that maybe the silence there, or maybe the hesitance to bring them out plays into a long game that they're doing with PlayStation Plus, which is fine. But I want people to think about it in a different way. It feels like you've been sucker punched in some way, where it's like, oh, the things we love from you, we're never going to get those again. But think about modernity. Infamous was really important because it was a choice-based game, which we didn't have any of, really. That was like almost unheard of at the time, outside of Mass Effect and a few others. And it was a superhero game. It's not 2009. It's 2022. We're a year away from a Wolverine game and a Spider-Man game, and you can make fucking meaningless choices in every game you play.
Yeah.
So it's just different. Sly Cooper is an even more pronounced iteration of that. Sly Cooper, I'm not hating on Sly Cooper. I love Sly Cooper. People will know that from back in my IGN days. I reviewed Sly 4. I gave it a good score. I thought it was awesome. But it is a game of its place in time. I think it would feel very backwards. And in fact, I think you can see a lot of Sly Cooper in Ghost of Tsushima. And I think you can see Infamous in Ghost of Tsushima too. I think that that's very clearly a sucker punch game. So interesting news, bad news perhaps, stifling news, but makes me more excited about the future. And I think anyone that thinks that they're not making a Ghost of Tsushima sequel is kidding themselves, because they want to build.
Yeah.
So on and so forth.
They got that movie coming. That's synergy.
Right. Synergy. Exactly. And Legends, I think, was a big, I know Chris especially was fond of Legends. Like, yeah. I think that was a big surprise to them. I think that was an experiment, and then it worked out. And I think that that's going to be heavily baked into the next one.
Yeah, for sure. There's a lot of potential in that.
All right, my friends. Number 3. If you were looking forward to playing Luminous Productions' action RPG Forspoken on PlayStation 5 later this year, well, we have some bad news. The game has been delayed for a third time. Originally slated for launch on PS5 in May of 2022, it was delayed until October of this year and has now been delayed again. It will now come to PlayStation 5 on January 24th, early next year. The delay was revealed across the game's social media channels, which noted in part that, quote, as a result of ongoing discussions with key partners, we have made the strategic decision to move the launch of Forspoken. All game elements are now complete and development is in its final polishing phase, end quote. It sounds like publisher Square Enix may be acting proactively to protect its game from a poor release window in the fall, when it may be better suited to the quieter early months of the year. Either way, the dev and publisher have both promised more on the game later this summer. Developed by Square Enix's internal team Luminous Productions, Forspoken is their second game. Their first foray, of course, was in the form of 2016's somewhat controversial Final Fantasy XV. The game, which is also slated for concurrent release on PC, is a timed third-party exclusive. Chris, hit me with it.
Well, I mean, this is exactly what I'm
you didn't do it.
about.
I was hoping you were going to say, I'm sorry, I was hoping you were going to say, did I move that with my mind?
Oh, no, I did that yesterday.
It was a release date.
It feels too we did that on the Defining Duke episode.
Right. And we're out of order, so I understand completely. Yeah. So what is your, what's your take?
I mean, this is exactly what I'm talking about when I say like, oh yeah, release dates are all fake. This is another example, and it's actually exactly the kind of delay that I generally predict for everything. It is. What was it originally supposed to be?
It was supposed to be May and then October,
right? And now it's
January.
Now it's oh my god, man! I hope they're using this time to, maybe tweak some VO. That's some of the easiest stuff to do. And in the grand scheme of things, no, I actually hope it's as campy and dumb as possible. I really actually I've come around on it. When you get so tired that you get like a burst of energy, That's kind of where I'm at with this, where it's like it's so dumb sounding that I almost want it to be even dumber than I think it is. So like I'm pretty stoked about it. I think I honestly think the gameplay looks awesome. I think it looks like it's going to be a fun game to play. I'm never going to be against a delay, because I think generally, there's the argument like, oh, well, look at all these games that get delayed and they come out a mess anyway. And it's like, can you imagine? Yeah, but can you imagine if they weren't? they'd be even worse. So I think this game looks in a far better shape than a lot of other titles. It looks pretty polished. It looks clean. It looks pretty. The VO looks grating, but I'm willing to go through that if it means the gameplay experience is good and the delay is all good to me. I think it does stand a way better chance in the month that it is coming out now than it did in the fall. Like, Jesus Christ, would have been murdered in the fall. Even with this really kind of bleak, kind of empty fall, like with God of War and Call of Duty and like probably a myriad of other smaller things, no way you're going to play Forspoken over God of War. And there's no way you're going to play Forspoken over Call of Duty.
Yeah, I think that it's like a double-edged sword. And actually, well, Spencer F. wrote in about this. He says, hey, boys, what is your take on the wording behind the Forspoken delay announcement? After discussions with our strategic partners, feels like a very rare direct statement that heavily implies Sony told them to move the release date. Am I crazy, or what else could this mean? Yeah, I think that this is one of those rare situations where it's not really rare, because Sony, I guess, is kind of the publisher. I mean, they're really not, but they have obviously a publishing stake in the game. And they probably look at it, especially with the release of the 2 Bethesda timed exclusives that were both kind of softly received commercially. And they were like, we got to figure out a better way to do this. So we're kind of wasting these releases. We definitely don't need it where it is now because of God of War and The Last of Us. I think that has something to do with it too. It would have been sandwiched in between those two games. I think it's a bad place to put it. And right. I think what I was saying, Dustin, was that the double-edged sword is that if the game isn't good, I feel like you don't want it to be compared to all of the fall bangers that are going to be coming out negatively, and that you want to move it away from that as well, which also gives you the extra time to maybe polish for a little bit. What's going to be key is they're going to announce when the game will go gold. And if the game goes gold in November, then I would say that this was not so much about the quality of the game. I think if the game goes gold closer to Christmas, then we'll know that it might have been about the quality of the game. But I think that Chris is right, and that I think Spencer is on to something where it's like there's more to this than just the quality of the game, in the sense that I don't think Sony wanted that game in October. I think Sony looked at it and said, like, we don't need this here. This doesn't benefit us here. It doesn't benefit you here. So let's do something about that.
Right. I feel like the more that I see gameplay from this, like while Chris was talking, I just brought up some of the more recent gameplay videos, and I really do think the combat, and particularly the traversal in this game, the way you navigate around the world and hop around, and it really does look cool. And there's a move in particular that I've seen in a couple different videos where it's like everything around the main character gets like crystallized, and it's really visually stunning. Like, just thinking about playing this game on an OLED TV and HDR sounds awesome. But the delay is not really a problem for me at all. And I don't think it is for a lot of people. And hopefully that gives them a little extra time. And like you said, a window and timing, I think, is an understated aspect of a game's, like, a way a game is forever remembered. The game that comes out at the right time is so, so important. And so not necessarily that this game is going to be like a amazing 10 out of 10. Hopefully it is. But if it comes out at a right time where people are hungry for something and it hits just right, then it can totally change the way we look back on this game, particularly if it's good, man. I mean, that'll be awesome. So I'm as much as we've dunked on this game, and I think it's deserved it in a lot of ways. I'm looking forward to this game, and I'm hoping for the best because I think it has a lot of really cool aspects. Yeah.
The timing of it is going to be everything, and I think it's wise of them. It's wise of them to move it.
Now it's going to come out around Dead Space, and maybe Resident Evil 4, which is fine because it compares better to those games. It's not a horror game. And I think you're right. Actually, I will bring in this before I even go any further. I'll bring in this inquiry from Peter along since he kind of asks about it. He says, "Hey guys, I think it's time for an honest look at Forspoken. Is anyone excited for this game? It looked terrible the first time they showed it, and the dialogue is B-movie cringe level, and it's been delayed again. It has major flop written all over it for me, and I was wondering what your feelings are on it." This is tough because I think we do these shows every week and we're kind of shooting from the hip. We kind of have to talk about how we feel in the moment and with what we know. And I think the reality is that there's no real reason why we should expect this game to be bad. I don't. Luminous Productions isn't some shit studio. They made Final Fantasy 15. It's not like they don't know how to make a game, and it's got some good writing talent behind it. And Square Enix has been very, very good lately as a publisher, very wise steward of their IP. And so I think that it's hard because I don't watch or listen to really gaming content at all. So I don't know what the feeling about this game is elsewhere. But I think that if it's a generally negative and almost comical feeling, it's too bad because it's probably not fair. But that is the reality. And I think that they look at it and they say, we want to have this smooth handoff from The Last of Us in September to God of War in November. We don't need some fucking streaker running across the field, and interrupting the play. Where we don't necessarily have the confidence. And that's why I think even if it's the same quality game, you just want to optically get it out of there and worry about it next year. Yeah. And I just don't think it's that important to them. It's more important to Square than it is to PlayStation. PlayStation wants the real meat, which is Final Fantasy 16. And that comes later that year. So we'll see. Mm-hmm. Forspoken, January 24, PlayStation 5. Number 4, a recent rumor has led to a more in-depth report that confirms some unfortunate news, at least if you were hoping to relive some of Rockstar Games' high points during the PlayStation 3 era. It appears that remasters of both Grand Theft Auto 4 and Red Dead Redemption have been shelved and are no longer being actively pursued by the developer, Rockstar, or its Take-Two associated publisher. The news first came from a GTA-centric leaker named Tez, who tweeted out in part, quote, "As per a reliable source with clear accuracy on Rockstar plans, remasters of Grand Theft Auto 4 and Red Dead Redemption were on the table a few years ago, but Rockstar chose not to proceed with the projects in mind," end quote. Tez goes on to speculate that the somewhat disastrous Grand Theft Auto Trilogy remaster on PS4 and PS5 from 2021 may be to blame. And later reporting from website Kotaku seems to confirm this, noting that the Grove Street-led definitive edition of the classic PS2 trilogy of GTA games scared Rockstar away, at least for the time being, putting its full force behind the recently revealed Grand Theft Auto 6, which we still don't know very much about. So while we would have never been the wiser as to these canceled plans if not for these leaks, suffice it to say we won't see either of these games remastered or reworked anytime soon. Grand Theft Auto 4, which came to PlayStation 3 in 2008, was a smash hit from a quainter time in Rockstar history. Only 4 years separated San Andreas on PS2 and 4 on PS3, but by the time we'll get 6, well over 10 years will have passed between 5 and 6. Red Dead Redemption, meanwhile, came to PS3 in 2010 and was technically the second Red Dead game, a follow-up to the 2004 PS2 game Red Dead Revolver. It was, of course, followed by a third game, the beloved Red Dead Redemption 2 on PS4 in 2018. Brandon McDade wrote in and said, "Hey, Slitters, any thoughts on the rumored cancellations of the GTA 4 and Red Dead remakes following the icy receptions of the original trilogy? Would a remaster of either game entice you to play them again? Thank you and have a great day." Dustin, I must say I'm disappointed in this because I think Grand Theft Auto 4 is an amazing game. And it's a completely amazing, beautifully satirical, wonderfully written, awesome acting, awesome writing, very fun game. I love Grand Theft Auto 4. And I think I knew it so intimately because I wrote the strategy guide for it. So I just beat it over and over again and did everything in it. And of course, the DLC, Ballad of Gay Tony and The Lost and Damned, are both awesome DLC packs that I think really set the stage for what DLC could be for other games. They're some of the first famous DLC expansions on console. So I was really excited to play it. Less so about Red Dead, which is a good game, but we have a much better version of Red Dead in Red Dead Redemption 2. Grand Theft Auto 4, though, I think kind of sits on its own, and it's disappointing. And I think this is smart because they basically let AI recreate Grand Theft Auto 3, Vice City, and San Andreas. And it's a great insult to those games. And it would have been a real shame for them to do that again with 4. So anyway, do you have any feelings about this situation?
I feel like I've seen some response to this story on Twitter that are taking it slightly out of context, where they're just going with, "Oh, Rockstar didn't do this because of the GTA remasters.
Yeah, that's speculation.
It's clearly from this leak, or not the leak, but this information is that it's speculation. And so I wonder if maybe if there was plans to do it, maybe the plans were to have Grove Street do them, and they said no fucking way after what happened. And so that's actually kind of a positive thing, is that these games aren't going to get touched by this studio that just completely shat out these horrible versions of these absolutely classic games. So in that way, it's positive, but at the same time, it's like, you're Rockstar. You have more money than anybody. You can find a competent team to go and do this. Like, and it would sell so many copies. It just seems obvious, but I don't know. At the same time, I can understand where maybe they're like, well, after what happened, we really can't take any risks, and at the very least, we need to be somewhat hands-on. And really, right now, we want to put everything into GTA 6. And so in some ways, I can kind of respect that, where they don't want anyone else touching their shit ever again. And right now, they're just like, we're working on making GTA 6 to be the most incredible, crazy, huge game that anyone has ever seen. And I kind of respect that singular focus. It's kind of shitty to the people in particular right now. There's a lot of pushback that basically Red Dead Redemption 2 online is basically dead. They basically are like done supporting that. And that community has always felt like Rockstar didn't care about them and didn't update. And that's kind of seems to have been the case, is that it just, since it didn't have quite the numbers of GTA Online, it just kind of fell by the wayside. And I don't know, it's one of those situations where I feel bad for that community for not getting the content that they wanted. But at the same time, it's like I said earlier, this is Rockstar. They're looking at GTA Online, and they're looking at where they can maximize things. And if Red Dead wasn't it, then I can understand them shifting focus. But I'd like to see these games get at least push over to PS4, to modern consoles. I know that the Series X backwards compatibility for both Red Dead and GTA 4 is very good. You can play at 60 FPS on Series X, which is cool. But I'd like to see that on PlayStation as well. Something, even if you can just do a little something instead of something full overhaul, would be nice. Just make it playable going forward.
There's no doubt that Take-Two is ruthlessly, like many corporations, ruthlessly focused on making money.
Yeah.
But I agree with you that when you own a company, Rockstar, I mean, it's kind of crazy to say because we don't really think about it, I guess, too much, but they're probably the second or third most important studio that's ever existed. And when you own them, you can just say like, well, this is like not only a cash cow, but an incredible prestige piece for our catalog of games and our catalog of studios. And the last thing we should be doing to a game like Grand Theft Auto 3 is exporting it to a team and then letting them use AI to remake all of the assets in the game. Like, what's surprising to me is that Rockstar doesn't say like, we're just going to have 50 dudes inside our studio. Who cares how much it costs? And all they're going to do is work on our old shit. They're going to tweak and work and just toil on getting this stuff fixed and making it good. And we don't want remakes of these games. We just want, instead of you using AI to smooth everything and rewrite all the text and all that, go asset by asset and rework them and remake them and re-render them and put them back in the game and do it that way. These are Grand Theft Auto games. That's the biggest surprise to me. So it's no doubt that they look at it and they say like, we can't do that with GTA 4. There's just no way we can allow that to happen. But part of me wonders like, no shit, guys. So go and find the people that would desperately make this game for you. No, like, well, and I'm sure Grove Street, I don't think it's all their fault because I don't think they went in and like, at least we don't know because there's been no lawsuits filed or anything like that. I highly doubt they did anything other than what exactly they said they were going to do. It just didn't work out. And if Rockstar really meant business and Take-Two really cared, because these games sold softly and were obviously received pretty bad too, they would have just taken them down and said like, we'll do better. Like, we'll be back. And that's the kind of shit you would expect from Grand Theft Auto. So anyway, Chris, how do you feeling about no GTA 4, no Red Dead remasters?
Yeah, I mean, I'm bummed about GTA 4 specifically because I'm kind of with you where I think that's a very special game. I never actually finished it, but I spent so much time playing Grand Theft Auto 4 just meandering around and just doing nonsense. And especially the online mode in that game, I thought was so fun. A lot more my speed than the kind of modern style of GTA 5, where it's kind of like a bit of a live service there. You got to like pay insurance in that game, and like just all this like weird, like all this very weird Second Lifestyle stuff that goes on. It wasn't the case in Grand Theft Auto 4. It was just kind of a sandbox, and it was cool. But, you know, I just feel like, generally speaking, I don't imagine that studio would have handled that project well, like, especially after that. So if it means that we don't get that version, if it means that we don't get like some, hey, here's an AI and it's going to make it for us, and like everything's going to be all weird, and Nico Bellic is going to look like a fucking Muppet or something, like, then I'm all right with it.
Brother, or no, it was a cousin.
Let's go bowling. Yeah. But I will say, like, I knew that Red Dead Redemption was replayable on Series X and like up-resed at 4K 60. I had no idea that GTA 4 was. So I might dabble in that today. But
yeah, you should, man. I mean,
yeah, I have no idea. I had no idea that was even available.
GTA 4 was a landmark game for me too. That was spring of 2008, because it was funny because Fallout 3 later that year was another one of those games for me where I was like, oh my God, where I remember playing GTA 4 and marveling over the pavement. Like because you could tell in the game for maybe the first time that they weren't using really specific tile sets, but that they were actually hand doing, or like everything was kind of unique, or at least there was differential enough where you didn't see replication and all of that in your immediate purview. And I remember marveling over shit like that in Grand Theft Auto 4. I'd never seen anything like it. I couldn't believe how good it looked. And Fallout 3, of course, was another game that just surprised me of the scope, like the possible scope of the game. It is kind of sad that they are stranded for PlayStation fans. You can't play GTA 4 or Red Dead natively on PS4 or PS5. So hopefully that'll be fixed at some point soon. And it's interesting because Rockstar was one of the very first and most prominent supporters of the PS2 initiative to get their games on PS2. I mean, you can play the fucking Warriors on PS4. You play Manhunt. You can play all sorts of Bully. You play all sorts of shit. You know? So maybe they'll come back around and realize that that's important. Their legacy is very important. But I think that they also look at it and say, like, our game sold 150 million copies. So we're good on the advice. Thanks. And I would say, all right, fair enough. Number 5. An unexpected piece of news recently crossed the wire, so stunning that I had to rub my eyes and read again. After many years, Phantasy Star Online 2, the Sega-driven MMORPG, is migrating westward on PlayStation for the very first time. The free-to-play game will come to PlayStation 4 in the West in the form of Phantasy Star Online 2 New Genesis, and it will launch as of August 31st. New Genesis is the newest iteration of PSO2 and supports full cross-platform play. Now, Phantasy Star Online 2 itself is old. It came to PC in 2012. However, while it had deep Japanese support on not only PlayStation 4 but PlayStation Vita, it never migrated to the West. The PS4 iteration of PSO2 came out in Japan in 2016, but it was preempted by a prominent Vita version from 2013. In the West, the game came to PC in 2020, as well as Xbox Series X and S and Xbox One. Phantasy Star Online 2 is obviously a follow-up to the original Phantasy Star Online, which came to Dreamcast in 2000. PlayStation gamers got a taste of this formula via Phantasy Star Universe, which came to PlayStation 2 in 2006. Phantasy Star itself, of course, dates back to the earliest days of Sega consoles. The original JRPG came to Western Sega Master Systems in 1988, and a trio of well-regarded follow-ups, Phantasy Stars 2, 3, and 4, came to Sega Genesis in the West in 1990, 1991, and 1995. There hasn't been a mainline Phantasy Star game in nearly 3 decades. I won't subject you guys to talking about this, but I have a soft spot for Phantasy Star. I love Phantasy Star. Phantasy Star was always the mystery RPG series to me because it was on Genesis and Master System, so I had to play it at friends' houses. And I always thought that we were talking on Plus, so we're kind of talking backwards, but just to give a shout out to Dustin, because I think on Plus you were talking about the increasing Japanese prominence, or Xbox's increasing prominence, I should say, in the Japanese market. Right. And Phantasy Star Online was one of those games that they went and got. But it really didn't matter because the game had been out for so long in Japan. So anyway, that is coming August 31st if you're interested.
and Colin, real quick, there's some history with Phantasy Star Online. I have to chime in because I remember that was the first MMO I played on Xbox, the original Xbox Live, Phantasy Star Online episodes 1 and 2. That game was amazing. It almost makes me want to check out this one, but I'm more tempted by Final Fantasy 14. But it's cool to see it finally come over. I remember there was a thing where there was a box, an unbreakable box, but you could shoot it and get XP from it. So if you found a friend that maybe had a turbo controller, you just let that baby run all night and you got a maxed out character. So it was like, that was one of the tricks that was like known in the game, is like max out with the box trick. So I wonder if anyone else remembers that. Let me know. I'm
interested in when they're going to go back to Phantasy Star single player games. I don't know what they're doing. They're doing nothing. It's been 30 years almost. So
yeah,
seems obvious.
I don't think it needs to be AAA. Maybe that's the problem that they're encountering, is those games are pretty sprite-based 16-bit games. The first one is 8-bit. And they look really cool, and they have certain perspectives. Like the perspective is almost more Dragon Quest, like you're behind everyone, but you can see the backs of them. And
yeah,
I don't know. Like I would like to. I've long dreamed of seeing a Phantasy Star 5 logo pop up, and they're like really going to do a Phantasy Star game. But I just don't think they're interested in doing it, and I don't even know if it really means very much to anyone anymore. No one. I don't think anyone even thinks of those games when they think of Phantasy Star, because it's been 22, 23 years since Phantasy Star Online came out.
Yeah, I definitely think of Phantasy Star Online when I think of Phantasy Star. I think there was a pretty large period of time where I didn't even know there were single player Phantasy Stars.
Yeah, they were like the Genesis Final Fantasy games, basically. And I brought it up in the past, but I just so clearly remember Phantasy Star 4 because it was $100. Like that's what I remember about it. You know,
I only remember Phantasy Star Online on the 360 because there was like a demo. There was like an online demo that you could download. It was like persistent. So it was like weird. It was like this vertical slice of the game that existed in perpetuity. And it functioned just like the normal one. It was just like a very small selection of like areas. And I would remember every New Year's for like a few years, me and my friends would go onto like some specific server and just hang out in the Citadel social space. And it was always, there were always people like trading nudes or something. Or like just sex pests on this one specific. It was the funniest shit. We would go on there. And we would just like see all these people. It's like, what's you? We're ASL or whatever it is.
Oh yeah, age, sex, and language.
I just remember thinking like, this is so funny. And we would just like walk around and talk to potential sex offenders, but it was fun.
But it was fun. Number 6. You may have not asked for it, but you're going to get it anyway. A remaster of the strange 2012 action game Lollipop Chainsaw is en route to unknown platforms, but presumably PlayStation 4 and PlayStation 5 in 2023. Lollipop Chainsaw, which was about a cheerleader fighting during a zombie outbreak, comes from Grasshopper Manufacture, the Suda51-led team best known for its No More Heroes franchise, as well as some other games like 2013's Killer is Dead and 2016's Let It Die. It's notable because it was co-written by James Gunn, who is, of course, famous these days as the writer and director of the Guardians of the Galaxy films and other flicks, too. However, the original game was published by Japanese conglomerate Kadokawa, though Warner Brothers picked up the Western rights, and it's here that we pick up the story. Yoshimi Yasuda, who was the original game's executive producer, released an extended letter noting that he and his studio, Dragami Games, had purchased the rights to the original game from Kadokawa, and that they're endeavoring to get the game ready for re-release. Interestingly, as noted by IGN, both Suda51 and James Gunn have publicly stated that they have no idea what this new project is and that they're not associated with it, nor is Grasshopper Manufacture itself. This is strange, as Yasuda repeatedly refers to himself and his team as the original creators of the game, though Suda is often mentioned as well. I don't know if you guys read this letter, which was extensive. I don't know why it had to be so long about the announcement of Lollipop Chainsaw. But this Yasuda character talks a great deal about how like it's the team, like we're back, we're bringing it back. But then the guy, Grasshopper and James Gunn are both like, well, we have nothing to do with this. We didn't even know anything about it. This game, I don't know, younger gamers might not even remember it, but this was a really interesting title that I feel like just snuck into the industry before the Outrage machine went into overdrive, because I don't feel like this game would have fared very well. If it came out even a year later or 2 years later, and it didn't fare very well. I mean, it didn't do very well, but it's nonetheless stylish rather, and interesting. So, Chris, what do you think? We're going to see Lollipop Chainsaw revived on PS4 and PS5 in 2023.
That is interesting. So it's a remaster of the 2012. It's a remaster of Lollipop Chainsaw.
Apparently so, yes.
Okay, so that's, well, I guess it would make sense why James Gunn wouldn't be involved, because his work is done. Also, they could not afford him. There's no way. Like, you'd be like, all right, I'm off to make $1 billion. I think, I don't know, this is exciting. Like, I haven't, this is a game that I've always been curious about, just because it was around the time that I started to pay like deeper attention to video games that this was out, and I still didn't have a lot of money, so I never actually got it. But I played it a little bit at a friend's house, and I actually thought it was kind of fun. Not fun enough for me to like splurge $60, which at that time was like, 3 months of scrounging. But I enjoyed what I played of it, and it seemed really like irreverent. And looking back on it, it does make a lot of sense that James Gunn wrote it, because it does feel very James Gunn, at least the parts that I remember. I'd probably pick this up. I'm curious about this. It's such a weird game, man. Like, I think, didn't you have like the severed head of your boyfriend or something? Like,
yeah, it's like on your hip. Yeah, exactly. And I wasn't interested in it because I just wasn't really down with No More Heroes. No More Heroes was cool, but I just wasn't really interested in it. And so this game just kind of came and went for me. But I might go back to it as well. Dustin, do you have anything to say about Lollipop Chainsaw Remastered?
Yeah, I feel like this game, I remember seeing it at like a GameStop, like looking at the case and being like, what is this? And so I watched like a trailer and some gameplay for the first time today. And I think this looks super fun and super cool. So I'm excited that they're re-releasing it. Hopefully it's of good quality, but it's also interesting. I remember seeing this and I looked it up to make sure that James Gunn mentioned about being, I guess it wouldn't be inspired, but he used some of the Lollipop Chainsaw, like some of the different aspects of that character for his version of Harley Quinn in Suicide Squad. And you can just get that feeling from looking at them both. And it's maybe he was like originally inspired by Harley Quinn and then was able to incorporate like his aspects into it. So that's kind of a cool aspect of it now looking back, and cool that people will be able to experience it again.
Yeah. It's almost like a historical piece in some way. Like it's just like really interesting to see, like, because James Gunn is like one of the biggest directors in Marvel right now. I mean, he arguably is the reason why Marvel has stuck around as long as it has, especially in the film industry, because like when Guardians of the Galaxy came out, that kind of became the template for a lot of other movies going forward, because it was so kind of universally loved for being so bizarre and different. And even like Taika Waititi, like his stuff is really like heavily influenced by it, I think. So I think just seeing this game from a writing perspective in a modern time and like kind of comparing it to like what he's done since, it could be like really interesting, even just for that. But it also does look, it's a fun game. Like I feel like it's going to be a cool little thing. Hopefully they handle it right. Hopefully hopefully Grove Street doesn't make it.
No, I don't think that'll be.
It's AI riddled. Everybody looks like the blow up pilot from Airplane. Oh god.
Final piece of news is number 7. Just quick. One of the most important sports franchises in gaming history is the Take-Two owned NBA 2K franchise, and it should come as no surprise that the annualized series is readying for another release. This time, not surprisingly, called NBA 2K23. The game comes to PlayStation 4 and PlayStation 5 on September 9th. The big news here is that the man himself, Michael Jordan, will adorn the cover of the game for certain editions. His first game since NBA 2K16 Special Edition. Of course, Michael wore number 23, hence the significance. And as an ode to longtime players of the series, developer Visual Concepts is reviving, reworking, and retooling NBA 2K11's Jordan Challenge Mode, celebrating different hallmark moments of his career. NBA 2K23 is the 24th NBA 2K game. The original game, NBA 2K, which I had, was a Dreamcast exclusive launched in 1999, and it wouldn't come to PlayStation 2 until NBA 2K2 migrated in early 2002. Indeed, Sega is both the founder and the original publisher of that franchise, which was acquired by Take-Two's 2K Sports vertical in 2005. Powerhouse developer Visual Concepts has been in charge from the very beginning and has developed every core entry. The team was purchased by Take-Two along with acquiring the rights to the franchise when Sega was in bad shape in the mid-aughts. So there's that. And since I wrote that, it was revealed that the normal version of the game will have Devin Booker as the cover star, who's from the Phoenix Suns. So look forward to that on PS4 and PS5, September 9th. I know many of you play that game. Please enjoy. I'd also like to note quickly, although this happened while we were recording, where is it here? Oh yeah, here it is. It's on Push Square. Skull and Bones was revealed. It is no longer a PS4 game. It is now a PlayStation 5 only game, and it comes out November 8th. Good night, sweet prince.
Oh my God. Really?
Yeah.
Holy shit.
So.
Oh no.
So there's that.
Okay.
And what else was here? Oh, there's going to be another Terminator game coming. That was announced just an hour or so ago. We'll get to all that next week. It's not that important.
Yeah.
But yeah, Skull and Bones, PlayStation 5, November 8th. I know you'll all be playing that on November 9th. No doubt.
Oh my God.
Okay. Let's get into listener inquiries. Of course, we end every episode of Sacred Symbols, a PlayStation podcast, with 6 questions, comments, concerns, thoughts, and ideas from the audience. You can submit them over at Patreon at patreon.com/laststandmedia. We appreciate your love, kindness, and support over there. And we try to get as much of a different variety of inquiries to end our show. Kickstand wrote in and said, since the dust has settled from all of the Final Fantasy love, can we talk about Square Enix's best IP again? When is Dragon Quest XII launching? Square Enix seems to have a full plate, but 11 was several years ago now. Since 11 exceeded sales expectations in the West, I'd wager at least 1 million sold in the US. I'd imagine this purportedly darker entry may have broader appeal outside of Japan. Great title too, Flames of Fate is quite a turn on. Could be a romance novel, but I digress. Also, I'm quite excited about the Dragon Quest III remake, hopefully this year on PlayStation 5. I never got to play the game, and when they showed way back in the 35th anniversary event, it looked awesome. I love this franchise and look forward to your thoughts. Thank you, Kickstand, for writing in. Always happy to talk about Dragon Quest. I think the Dragon Quest III remake that they're doing, the 2.5D, or what do they call it? That's not what it is. They have some special terminology at Square Enix, don't they? For that specific style of game that they make. I don't know. But
I have no idea.
They're remaking it in that watercolorish, interesting style, whatever. I don't know what it is. You don't know what I'm talking about, Dustin?
I'm trying to remember the watercolorish style.
But like it's like not even watercolor. Anyway, they have this specific 2D 2.5D style that they do, and they remake everything in, or they're remaking things in. That Dragon Quest III remake that they're doing, I think, is important because I think that when that is announced and finally comes out, I do believe that then they'll have something to say about Dragon Quest XII. And Dustin, I don't know, like, it's funny. I saw this. I was eager to get it in the show because I was just thinking about Dragon Quest XII in the sense that, like, what is it going to look like? What is it going to be like? Dragon Quest always looks exactly the same. I think you can look at the original Dragon Quest, Dragon Warrior on NES, and all the way to 11, and see how they all fit together, just based on the mores and the rule sets of tech at the time. I'm really curious what this Dark Dragon Quest is going to be, and I wonder why they even announced it like that, because I think people have these now varying expectations that are probably not going to be met about what that means. Because is it going to be Dragon Quest without that bubbly music? Is it going to be Dragon Quest without a slime smiling at you? And those, I don't know what to make of it. I don't know what to think of it, but I'm excited. What do you think?
I'm always interested in darker stories. And that's actually, I think, one of the most redeeming aspects of Final Fantasy 15 is that it comes off as this like bright and happy, boys on a road trip story, and then gets progressively darker. And so the thing that I think could be an interesting thing for them to pull off is just with this bubbly anime cartoon style to do a darker story at the same time could be really interesting. And to me, that type of contrast of having a more colorful art style is along with a darker story is very interesting. That's like very appealing to me. But I don't know. It's just a Square Enix thing to just like, hey, we're working on this and this is kind of the direction. And then they just kind of like disappear for a while. And then they will beat you over the head for the last year and spoil every aspect of the game, like they did with Kingdom Hearts and Final Fantasy 15. And their big titles, they seem to just like their marketing is just like too much. So I don't know. I'm curious. I was looking at See, there's an article I pulled up from comicbook.com, which actually a friend of mine, Logan Moore, wrote, where I guess there was a video that they put out on Dragon Quest Day back in May, which basically said, we are working very hard on building Dragon Quest XII, but there will be plenty more Dragon Quest to tide you over until it's finished. So not really much of an update at all.
Yeah.
So I'm guessing this game is still deep into production, and I don't expect to hear anything until next year, really.
By the way, the term that I was looking for was HD 2D.
HD 2D.
Which is they keep using that terminology at Square Enix. Like, I think that Live Alive is that, Dragon Quest III, Triangle Strategy, Octopath Traveler, like that style of game. They're calling it.
They need to do that
HD
for Final
2D.
Fantasy VI.
That'd be
Do
sick.
it.
Or maybe just re-release Final Fantasy VI on PlayStation in a playable form. That would be nice. Okay. Jeremy S. wrote in and said, hey, Slatters. I don't know what that means. I don't like it.
I don't know what's going on.
I don't know.
It's all...
Yeah,
it's starting to. This is starting to become like Tower of Babel.
Yeah.
Where like it's just like I don't know what anybody's saying anymore.
It's exactly right. Biblical. With all of the discussion around digital game purchases and or if the game is included in subscription X, Y, or Z, I'm sitting here wondering why there isn't an option to do a la carte digital game rentals. As my game time dwindles with an aging newborn, it's difficult to justify buying full price games or even an ongoing service that I may or may not interact with for weeks at a time. If I get a few hours one weekend to play a game, an awesome option would be to drop $4.99 or what have you in a similar manner you do for digital movie rentals. Once started, you get 48 hours to finish it and then it disappears from your library. Do you guys see this working out as a future option? Why or why not? This is a nice idea, but it just would never work. And I'm actually surprised that they even let you rent movies and TV shows. And I think the reason that they do that is because no one buys them or very few people buy them. So it is literally the only way to churn. But gaming is different. We've been renting games since the very beginning. In fact, people had to go to court just to have the right to rent games in the 80s, which is incredible. And that was a bigger deal with movies. But there wasn't even necessarily a legal right to be able to share games like that and rent access to them. But in this day and age, it reminds me of when 10 years ago, I make fun of it sometimes when GameStop was talking about how they're trying to look into used digital games. And it's like, what are you fucking talking about? At that point, you're out, GameStop, you're done. Like you're not needed in that space anymore. But with the elimination of that used space comes the idea that, well, the rental space and all these peripheral ways to access games have also gone away. And so now you have only 2 points of entry. It's either you buy it or you can pirate it, I guess, if you want to, but you buy it or you subscribe to it. And I don't know that renting makes any sense because why wouldn't you rent the game? You're talking about $4.99 for a weekend. So I'm going to pay $70 for the game. You pay $4.99 for the weekend. If you want to rent it for the weekend, I would think something like $29.99 or something like that would be the price. And I think that when you start looking at the price and how it would actually work, I think it would not be very tantalizing. What do you think, Chris? Is this a interesting thought exercise to you?
I think you're spot on, honestly. Like I feel like also just the idea of renting in the game space for whatever reason is so like it feels older than it should to me anyway. Like it feels like something that's like from a bygone era. And we have like certain things that are like, oh, we have demos and we have trials and obviously things like subscription services with like Game Pass where you can get the entirety of a game for an entire month for $1. You know, like I just find that obviously that depends on whether or not it's on the platform, but there's a ton of stuff on that platform. Same thing with PS Plus. I feel like subscription services are almost kind of the modern way that we rent. It's a way for us to experience things without putting a lot of thought into what it is that we're getting. It's like, oh, this is in the old days. It was like you go to a rental store, you go to a Blockbuster, like, oh, I'll rent this for $5 or whatever. And you'd bring it back either the next day or after the weekend was done. And I just don't see a way to do that now digitally without it being kind of filtered through the lens of here's a subscription service that ultimately dollar per dollar is a lot more valuable than renting will ever be. I just feel like that's where we've ended up. And I don't know if I would care to rent game. Even the trial thing on the highest tier of PlayStation Plus to me feels like, yeah, maybe. I don't know. I'm not the kind of person to do this, though, in fairness. This is like the least interesting thing about the games industry to me is like the rental space. And even when I was like younger and poor, I wouldn't really rent things my parents would rent stuff for me, but like, I would always save up money for the games that I knew that I wanted. So this doesn't speak to me at all, or the desire to return to that era where we were renting stuff. It doesn't really resonate with me.
Yeah, there's just nothing capitalistically. There's nothing to gain for the publishers. The developers would just destroy themselves doing this. It just would make no sense.
Yeah.
I like that. I think it's a fun, to Jeremy's point, I think it's a fun mental exercise, Dustin, but I don't see it, because I think what people, I think their thought processes are too linear. Like, something comes and replaces something else. And so they're like, okay, so how does this new thing fit into the paradigm? And it goes on and on. But at some point you're like, well, but that there is no new thing in the new paradigm. It's gone. We don't rent games anymore. Like, there are no video stores anymore. No one gets Netflix by mail anymore. It's over. There's no replication of that because we don't need it anymore.
Yeah.
And as nostalgic as I am for the video store, I love the fucking video store. I mean, it was awesome. It was like half of your culture came from the boxes of video stores. Like, you wouldn't even know what you were looking at.
Yeah.
But we don't live in that world anymore. I don't know why people are so insistent. And I don't think Jeremy's being this way. So I'm sorry, Chris, go ahead.
Well, there's the other thing too, where it's like the only thing that I remember liking about renting. I mean, like I did GameFly for a little bit, and that was cool. But that was like weeks. You know, like, it would take like a week for a game to get to you in the mail, and then it would take like a week for you to send it back, and that's like half your month kind of gone just sending things back and forth. And even when you got stuff at video stores, it's like a lot of the charm of that was like, oh, hey, I'm going to open this box I'm going to open this Gears of War box that I'm going to rent from, you know, whatever video store or whatever, or like GameStop or whatever the hell. And there would be drawings in the booklet, or there would be like some note with like a bunch of codes or something. Like, there was a history to that physical item that was kind of interesting. And that doesn't exist in digital, in a digital form. There's nothing charming about renting a digital game. There's no experience there that's any different from just buying it, really. It's just dead.
Well, this is what you weren't on it, but when I spoke to Michael Mumbauer and John Garvin, that was kind of my head against the wall, kind of not really being able to progress with their particular idea of scarcity in digital games and all of this, because I struggle with that too. Like, how does it translate? There's digital scarcity, because their argument would be, and I think it's a legitimate argument, is saying, like, well, there's scarcity with anything that is manufactured, but it seems much more arbitrary in the digital space. And I think that matters. It's just arbitrary scarcity. It's not arbitrary to go get more plastic and then manufacture it and then ship it over the ocean. That's not arbitrary. I mean, it's a choice.
Yeah. Oh, no.
Yeah.
The best way that I can think to describe it is like, if I make a video, right, I'll make a video and I'll post it to YouTube. That video is going to be seen by, you know, hundreds of thousands of people. But I didn't have to make hundreds of thousands of that video. It's just one video, and it's being shared between everybody. It's like the labor is like so different. If I wanted to sell and make 100,000 shirts, that's a bitch that scales appropriately with the amount that I'm selling, or with the amount that is being viewed. Especially, or even in the old days with video, like, oh, I have to make this cassette tape, and I have to make this cassette tape, and I have to print this and print that and print this. But it's like, that's not the world we live in anymore. So that would be my head against the wall too. Like, I don't view manufacturing in that way, because I don't manufacture in that way. Like, when I make digital content, it doesn't work that way.
Exactly. So therein, the rental idea just doesn't really make sense. However, it does work in other spaces. People still rent books by going to the library. People, obviously, I rent things on Amazon Prime all the time. I don't know. Dustin, what do you have anything to add?
I just think that it's not in now that the ball is fully in the what's the platform holders court with this, that it's like, why would they do that? Why would that be in their interest when somebody could? It already probably hurt, like, rental of physical games probably hurt sales, because people like me would go out and rent a game like Until Dawn and then play it in 2 sittings. And they make money off that initial rental purchase, but they didn't make anywhere near as much money as individual copies. So it's like, I can see them not wanting to facilitate that. And so they kind of are doing something in the middle with the game trials, where it's like, yeah, you can play 2 hours. That's pretty cool. That's almost like a game rental in some way. And then, like Chris said, with subscriptions, that's kind of like the new way to be able to check stuff out. So yeah, it's a cool idea, but I just see that there's too many people that would like speed run through a game and really not get a good experience just in order to save a few dollars or something like that. And I can totally understand why Sony or Xbox or whoever wouldn't want to do that from a financial perspective.
Dude, I mean, the rental space totally stymied game sales, but it's a matter of that's the consumer's right to kind of interface with it that way. I remember the more urgent space was in shareware, where the only way that it was a total honor system. There was nothing stopping anyone from copying shit on 3 1/4 floppy disks and all the other shit. So anyway, or no, it's 3 1/2 floppy disks, 5 1/4 floppy disks. Okay, let's move on to the next one. Vonerin wrote in and said, "Hey CDC, will 5-year dev cycles become a detriment to the industry? No one wants to be Cyberpunk 2077. Thus, game delays and Miyamoto quotes are now commonplace for game development, along with demand to kill crunch culture. If game generations are roughly 10 years, then developers have 2 chances to make a game in a generation now. If you're Santa Monica and a game gets canceled, you get 1 chance in the PS4 generation. Sure, multiple teams could help this problem, but the only teams that inspire confidence for Xbox and PlayStation are Obsidian and Insomniac. I don't know about that. The rest of the industry, except for From Software, have yet to fully adapt sufficiently. For Xbox, fans of Bethesda will see Starfield in 2023 and The Elder Scrolls 6 at the end of the generation. For PlayStation, fans of Naughty Dog will get Last of Us Factions and The Last of Us Part 3 or some other IP." Yeah, I generally get what you're saying here, and I want to kick it over to you first, Dustin. Because this is something that we talked about on the Sacred Symbols Plus episode a little bit towards the end about Ashfall with the guys from, what is it, Lethos? Lethos, right? Yeah. Lethos. And we were talking about that because that was, of course, kind of something coming out of Sony where games are becoming too expensive and they're taking too long to make. I do think this comes at great detriment. And I think that the studios that figure it out quicker are the ones that are going to maybe benefit most because it lowers your margins. It also allows you to take more chances more often. Of course, the risk comes more often as well to release more products. But it's so interesting that Uncharted was released in 2007. Uncharted 2 was released in 2009. Uncharted 3 was released in 2011. Infamous 1 was released in 2009. Infamous 2 was released in 2011. It just, these big AAA games used to happen quickly, and it's just not even possible anymore. What do you think of that?
In some ways, I feel like there are so many, gaming is so much more popular now than it used to be. There are more people making games than ever before. So I don't really like it, with there being more developers and more games coming out, the longer dev cycles are only really a detriment to we'll say like sequels and series and stuff like that, where it's like, you got to wait another 5 or 6 years in order to play the follow-up to that game. But at the same time, there is something to be said about what Sean Layden was saying when he was exiting PlayStation about, like, is it really the ultimate goal? Like, are gamers really wanting like these 100-hour experiences for every single thing? Like, why can't we shrink things down a little bit and focus on like a really tight, smaller experience that would cost less to make and potentially be more enjoyable for the people who play it? And I think there's something to that. And I don't know if there are any companies really pursuing that. I know Sony, it seems like they're really not doing that. You kind of saw that maybe like Miles Morales was something that was greenlit under Sean Layden and is kind of like the last remnant of that. But I wonder too if there's an aspect that we can start to see change, and this might just be marketing. I'd be really curious to hear about a developer that's using new tools like specific Unreal Engine 5. One of the things they've always emphasized about that is how it's easier for developers to create games for it. And so when you have something that would make it easier, then you can have more games more often and maximizing tool sets and stuff like that. And there's also the aspect of reusing assets. It's okay. It's if you have a good asset, it's really not a problem reusing it. Like that's something that's never really bothered me. Obviously, you don't want to copy and paste your entire game and just make small tweaks, but there's nothing wrong with a boat animation. That's perfectly fine. It's still good.
What do you think, Chris? do you feel like something's got to give in this sense? It seems like developers are kind of trying to desperately, although quietly, plead with players to understand that it can't stay like this, that something has to give. The money, the expectations, the revelation in game design and game production, something's got to give. And I'm wondering what you make of it.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely don't want to persist on this track record or on this track where it's like, oh, it used to be, I mean, it used to be in the PlayStation era, like the original PS1, games would come out super quickly. Like it would be like maybe 11 months to a year. I know the Crash Bandicoot games specifically were, I think, 1 year apart, each of them, some of them even less than a year. And then obviously once we got into the 2000s and the early 2010s, it began to be a 3-year dev cycle was commonplace. And now it's 5 years. And trajectory, you know, if you believe in trajectory, that's pretty bad. That means it's like eventually we'll be like, 7 years, 10 years. And it's like, not great. Not good for anybody. Not good for team health. Not good for the consumer because they get less. I think ultimately if we got fewer, like really like, I would say almost 2 AAA games, like things that like, oh, wow. They look at every single blade of grass and how realistic all the details are on every single blade of grass. And it's like, cool, I'm going to run past it at 60 frames per second and not look at it at all because it doesn't really matter that much. I think if we can scale back a little bit to focusing on what's important, I think that's why Insomniac is so impressive to me, is because they could do Spider-Man and then they can do Ratchet and Clank and then they can do Spider-Man and Miles Morales and then they could be like, oh yeah, we're working on Wolverine and Spider-Man 2 as well. You can tell by looking at Insomniac's games that visually speaking, stylistically, they're wonderful, but you can tell that they don't spend a lot of time on things that Naughty Dog would pay attention to, or even things that Guerrilla would pay attention to, like the individual hairs on Aloy's cheeks. You're not going to see that in Spider-Man because I think they understand that it's not necessary. You know, they're focusing on what's important, which is the gameplay, things looking as good as they need to look to be impressive, but also not add 5 years to the dev cycle. And I think there's also something to be said about the way that the internet impacts development as well, where, you know, you share a clip of a video game, and this is really popular with Halo Infinite when they were comparing it to Call of Duty with the fruit physics or whatever, and like people just like nitpicking shit, where it's like, yeah, of course games are taking longer because people don't want to have those clips go viral, and they're just like, oh man, like what? Like in retrospect, was it really that big of a deal that a gorilla in Halo had a silly face when he was dying? I kind of don't think so. No. Like, I really don't think that was a big deal at all. There was much bigger problems with that game to be, obviously now in retrospect, it's obvious to see that. But I feel like that's part of why these development cycles are getting longer, is because we expect AAA games to look amazing 100% of the time. And back in the day, that wasn't necessarily the case. It was okay for things to be a little bit, not jank, but not so overly polished that it took them 4 years to put something out. And I think we need to scale back a little bit. There's so many fun games that I've played in the last 5 years that don't look like cinematic masterpieces, that are super fun and that come out at a more reliable cadence. And I think that's a better cadence for the industry. I think 3 years is a perfectly fine cadence. And I think you can still make fantastic games in 3 years. I don't think you need these 5-year development cycles. And people are like, oh man, Battlefield, like the way they handle these franchises, like, oh, we spent a lot of time on Battlefield and it's still fucked up. That's not a time issue. That's a talent issue. That's a management issue. Get better at that stuff so that way you can have these shorter periods. And maybe we can recalibrate what we expect out of our games. Because as amazing as, you know, as amazing as a visual experience as The Last of Us Part 2 and God of War are, I don't want to take part in an industry that views any game that doesn't come close to that as inferior inherently or less value just because, oh, it doesn't look like the actress photorealistically or some shit. There's room in this space.
I think it's interesting too that I think some games like with legendary development times, like Final Fantasy IV, I think was made in less than a year. Majora's Mask, I think, was made in about a year and a couple of months. And Vice City was made in 13 months, and it's just unimaginable. I like I said earlier, when it took 4 years for Rockstar to make Grand Theft Auto 4, everyone was like, "What? How does it? 4 years? This is going to be amazing, extraordinary," and it was. And 4 years is quaint now. I mean, it's a quaint time to make a AAA game. So something's got to give. I think it is a problem. I think it's a problem too from just a creative standpoint. You touched on it, Chris. You don't want your people making games for that long. You want them to work on different things. I think the reason that a lot of studios don't have different teams working under the same studio is because I think it's going to attract, projects will just attract and distract people one or the other, and they're not going to stay in their silos. And I think Naughty Dog learned that with Uncharted 3 and The Last of Us. So I don't think that that's a good solution, but there is some sort of piece of me that wishes every single first party team had a small silo studio that was making something small. And he did bring up Obsidian, which is doing that. And I think Xbox is allowing their studios to leverage more of that small feel as well. But I think there's certainly no focus at Obsidian right now. Like, what is Obsidian really known for right now? You know, they're known for a few things, which is fine. But I don't know that that's what PlayStation's necessarily looking for either. All right. Nuclear Prostate wrote in and said, "Hi, lads. This question is mainly for Kyle Dog, but feel free to chime in if you have similar experiences. You've said a few times about how you were a huge Nintendo fan, but over time you moved over to PlayStation. When did this start to happen? I know you preferred the PS1 to the N64, but you were also a huge GameCube fan. Was it the Wii? I feel like that's when many of us moved away. Was this move away from the company you once loved weird for you?" Yeah, it was the Wii. It was the Wii single-handedly. And yeah, I was a big Nintendo fan my entire life. I came on the PS1. I bought my PS1 in 1997, but Dagan had one, my brother, since the launch in 95. And Final Fantasy VII and all of that was what brought me over. But I was still a big Nintendo 64 fan and Game Boy Advance fan, Game Boy Pocket, Game Boy Color earlier than that. But the Wii was just a step too far for me from just the lack of meaningful first and second party software. After a while, there were some amazing games. Super Mario Galaxy, of course, is a masterpiece. But there just weren't many games. And I just think I'm surprised that Nintendo, it sounds cynical, but it's like, how have they retained anybody over time? I understand people discovering Nintendo, staying with Nintendo, and then exiting Nintendo when they realize they're just getting the same thing over and over again. But I entered Nintendo, in the mid to late 80s, and I exited, I don't know, 20 years later. Eventually I couldn't play another Pokemon game. I played every Pokemon game until I just couldn't play one anymore. I played every Mario game until I just couldn't play Mario anymore. I played every Zelda game until I couldn't play Zelda anymore. And I think one of the things that attracts me to PlayStation so much and what I think is so cool is that, can you name a single franchise from PS1 that's relevant right now on PS5? Or a single franchise? I'm talking about PlayStation franchises, even from PS2 that's relevant right now. God of War rebooted. MLB The Show comes to mind. The point is that these are newer brands, newer machines than the things I'm citing, and Sony's already moved on. So it always feels, from my perspective, fresh. And when I had time, about 10 years, to kind of compare the experiences, I was like, well, there's just no comparison here. I loved GameCube. I thought GameCube was awesome. But the Wii was just really a step backwards. And
that was a rough one.
It was bad. It was bad. And I was a true believer, man. No one was a more true believer of Nintendo than I was. Even with the Wii for a little while, I was definitely drinking the Kool-Aid with the Wii.
I remember being excited because I was like, oh, whoa, what's it called? The Nintendo Revolution.
Yeah.
I remember being like, that sounds sick. And then they were like, it's the Wii. Just kidding. And I remember immediately just feeling like, oh.
Yeah, the Revolution. That was it. That was right.
Yeah.
Dolphin
I was so excited about
it. Revolution was, the Wii.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. Were you saying something?
Oh, no, not really.
Okay.
Just interjecting. Just interrupting you disrespectfully.
No, you're not. No, it's all good. So that explains why I've kind of moved away from Nintendo. Dustin, what's your feeling on Nintendo these days? Does that resonate with you? That my theory is that I would imagine most players of games have this frame where they're discover Nintendo and then it's fresh, but it must expire at some point. Like, I don't understand what exactly is keeping people engaged over many years that wasn't already there. That's kind of my struggle. So because I remember playing Pokemon Platinum, I want to say, and being like, I can't do this anymore. I literally cannot do this anymore. I won't do it. And anyway, what's your thoughts on Nintendo?
Yeah, I mean, some people, I think, like that sense of comfort and familiarity, particularly with Pokemon games, which they finally have started to somewhat change them up, which is cool. But I'm with you in that sense, where it's just eventually I was like, man, these games really are all the same. But I don't know. I feel like with Nintendo's other first party IP that often there are interesting change ups in the formula. Not always, but sometimes. And I like legitimately, I think that the jump between Mario Kart Wii and Mario Kart 8 is huge. I don't really like Mario Kart Wii at all, but I thought 8 was fantastic. And so I don't know. I mean, Nintendo fans are dumb and will buy anything they put out, and I'm one of those people. I won't buy any. I'm not like quite like, I didn't get Mario Strikers, though I thought about it, even though I'm like, I have not really any interest in this game, but it's Nintendo and it's looks fun. Like, I don't know. For me, there's some kind of thing with Nintendo that like their baseline of quality is usually pretty high, though I think in recent years they've started to slip as far as their games being feature complete at launch, which is really frustrating. But I don't know. I think that Nintendo, for a lot of people, just has that nostalgia factor where it feels good, even if it's kind of the same stuff. It's that familiarity, and I don't know. I can't really blame people. I'm sometimes that person as well. Like, I will play any new Mario game basically like till the end of time, and I like Mario games. And I don't know, Colin, the same thing could be argued, I guess, for you. Like with Far Cry games, you're kind of getting the same since Far Cry 3. You've been getting kind of the same experience that's slightly different. And
that's true. That's totally true. That's totally true.
And that's
but
fine.
It's been 10 years, so we don't really know yet. I might come to Far Cry. Who knows if we even get another Far Cry game? I don't really think we're going to. No matter how well Far Cry 6 sold, I just don't think that they're going to do that anymore. I think Far Cry will be something else, or maybe come back later, kind of go on break with Assassin's Creed or like Assassin's Creed. But you might be right, because maybe I'll come across one where I'm like, I can't do this anymore. I don't know. I don't want to be too hard on Nintendo. They're obviously a dominant company, and they're the most important company to my gaming youth. The only reason I played games. And a little piece of Colin trivia. Some of you know this, but the first time I had a job offer at IGN was for the associate editor of IGN GameCube. So imagine, and now I didn't take that job, and I went back to college. I was an intern at the time, but imagine if I took that job, I probably would have been a Nintendo person all the way through in the industry. I would have probably killed myself by now, because I would have had to cover the Wii and the 3DS. So, which were just, and the Wii U. Oh my God. I would have never survived. Man. I would have never survived. So that's my answer. I appreciate talking about Nintendo. I love talking about Nintendo, but I am over Nintendo. And I love being so heavily invested in a brand that doesn't stick around with shit long enough to make you over anything, which is nice. Maybe that'll change one day. They even seem to know when to walk away with Uncharted, which was very unexpected. Okay. Lucius Calcifer wrote in and said, "Hello there, Colin." Now, a few people wrote in about this. He says, "Why do you get so defensive about people recommending games to you? Seeing how happy it made you that people were checking out Wild Arms these last weeks, I think is proof that recommending games, even without knowing if someone will like a game, is a good thing. I think people just want to be happy they were able to recommend you something worthwhile, because for them, it is." So people think I was a little out of pocket last week with talking about game recommendations and how people make recommendations for themselves and not for the person receiving the recommendation, which I don't think is always true, but I think is often true. Totally. Yeah. I mean, it's true. And we all know it because we do it ourselves probably in our own lives, where you like want someone to see something you like. You think they'll like it, but you also want them to see it so that they know that they're right, that you'll like it. And it's kind of a risk. It's a mathematical equation. That's why I'm very careful in my real life with what I recommend to people. And so I wanted to say to Lucius's inquiry here, I think people have to kind of look at it through the frame of, I'm bombarded for many years with recommendations from people just on books, TV shows, movies, blah, 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 whatever. It's great. Games, of course. It becomes a lot after a while because you want to like receive that feedback in good faith, but after a while you can't. And the reality is that I don't, because I don't have the bandwidth for it anymore. occasionally someone will sneak in at the right time and say, like, you got to watch this movie. You got to watch this TV show. You got to play this game. It fits. But generally speaking, it just kind of, it's like just bouncing off of me because I become so overwhelmed with options. And I know my own taste well enough to know that, no, I will not like Divinity Original Sin 2. I won't.
Right.
I don't know. And that was my point. It was like, I don't know why you would think I would like that. See, when I recommend Wild Arms, I don't say everyone listening to the show. There's 100,000 of you or whatever listening to the show. Everyone. All of you motherfuckers are playing Wild Arms now. Do it. No, what I say is I like Wild Arms. It's a wonderful JRPG. I'm loving that people are discovering it for the first time. And there's a lot to love there for people that enjoy it. But I never make more declaratory statements, or at least I rarely do like that, because I don't think everything is for everyone. You have to be kind of careful in that way. So it's not meant to offend anyone. I just want people to think about it from maybe my perspective of how steeled you'd become if you were just endlessly told what you would like, you know, and knowing that when you listen to that advice, that a lot of time it's dead wrong. And then after a while, you kind of make adjustments based on that. Keep the recommendations coming. Keep telling me what you like, but don't be surprised if you are the 1,000th person to tell me that I want to play Divinity Original Sin 2 and I'm going to love it. And I tell you, can you name one game in my back catalog of trophies that is like Divinity Original Sin? Can you even find one? Like, what is so that's what I'm talking about. That's it. I'm not asking anyone to do any research. Just don't expect if I'm flippant about it. That's all. Dustin, you had something to say.
Listen, Colin, you would really like Kingdom Hearts. I'm telling you. If you played it from the beginning and really just gave it a chance, I know you would love it.
Give it 100 hours.
You have to start with Dream Drop Distance.
Give it at least 3 games and a spinoff.
So I know that I get prickly and curmudgeonly. That's my whole thing, and I get it. And I don't mean to offend people and discard them like that. It's just that imagine if I took on board everything you guys actually said to me and told me to play. My head would explode.
Well, there's also the difference in context of a recommendation from us on this show and from other people to us, where it's like the context of a recommendation. Whenever we say, like, whenever one of us says, I recommend this, typically that's built on you guys having listened to the show and kind of understanding where each of our individual tastes lie. If you're somebody who has tastes like me, and I recommend something, then that's probably something that you might want to check out. If I recommend something and you are more in line with Colin or Dustin, then you're probably, I'm not really speaking to you in that way. If you want to check it out, cool. But like, that's kind of the nature of a recommendation when we're talking in this format. But when it's the other way around, it becomes, it's a very different cocktail. So that's also something to consider.
Yeah, it's all ultimately meaningless because it's all video games, and I get that. But I just wanted to clarify because a few people did write in about that. I didn't mean to be so prickly that people were like, "Whoa, man! Like, what's wrong with you?" People recommending you games. That wasn't the way I tried to come off at all, or I did come off that way to some people that I meant to come off. But nonetheless, I wanted to visit it. Lucius, thank you for writing in.
Yeah, you should also all play Ape Escape, all of you.
Yeah, all of you, regardless of your taste or what you like to play.
Baby-headed simpleton.
Why, we don't know. Flaunty has the final inquiry. He says, hi, guys. Sorry if you've had this question before. Have you thought about at what age would you retire from gaming? I think about how much time and money gaming takes up, and I'm seriously considering retiring at 30. I'm 25, so I wouldn't have long left, and it scares me a little bit, but I know I want to take up some new hobbies when I get older. This is so arbitrary. Dustin, you're laughing.
I'm laughing at this question. The 5-year plan of a hobby. Like, it just sounds, I mean, to each their own.
That's imminent. That would freak me out. Why are you doing that to yourself, Flaunty? I don't understand.
Yeah, don't. Yeah.
Well, like, okay, you enjoy something. Why would you want to arbitrarily in advance put a time limit of when you want to stop doing it? Like, you hit your birthday at 30 and you're like, well, I still enjoy gaming, but I guess
you're 20 hours into a game and you're like, well, I'm 30.
Fuck. Yeah. I mean, there could be an argument of like, oh, well, this, like he mentions time and money. Like, I really need to be focusing on other stuff. And if gaming is a problem and you can't control your time inputted into it, then I could see, yeah, maybe you want to take a step back. But the planning around it, I mean, I never want to stop gaming. I hope that I love it my entire life as much as I do right now. And there may come a time where I'm unable to game the same way that I'm able to now. And that'll be unfortunate. But I don't know. Like, to me, it's just like, hell yeah, this is the lifelong thing. This is what I've centered my life around games. I've made it my career. I've made it my favorite hobby. Like, I don't know. I pray that I never stop liking it because it enriches my life so much. Why would I want to plan out going like removing it?
Like
That
the
just
misery
seems
that comes when you have that chasm in your life that is not filled by what you enjoyed doing to begin with. See,
yeah,
I tried to walk away from gaming a couple of times. Well, not tried. I did walk away from it once in college because I just needed to get away from it. And I was drawn back in not even a year later. And then when I quit Kind of Funny, I left for, a few months, and it drew me back in. And I realized at that point that I'm always just going to be in. That I think maybe our buy-in will be different. Like Dustin says, our ability to play, our time to play, our I don't know, the what we want to play or how we want to play, or the things that are important to us, that might change, but it is what it is. And I think gaming is kind of unique because a lot of people make fun of this term like gamer and stuff like that, but I have no problem with that term. I really don't, because because people are like, we don't call ourselves movie goers, and it's like, but you're watching a movie for an hour and a half or 2 hours once or twice a week. People that play games are investing hundreds of hours a year into their hobby, thousands of hours into their hobby, thousands of dollars into their hobby. It is a lifestyle. Like, I think you can game casually, but I think that those who listen to this podcast, it's more of a lifestyle. It's something you choose to do. It is a big cutout. And without it, I don't even know what I mean, I could imagine a million other things I could be doing, but I don't want to. What do you think, Chris?
I don't know. I feel like I can't imagine that I'll ever stop playing. Like, there might be a time where I'm like not really interested in what the industry is doing. I could see that happening. I could see like maybe in 10 years when everything's a live service and everything's an NFT being like, I might check out. But even if I checked out in 10 years, there would be so much that I missed that I didn't play that I can't imagine ever running out of interesting things to do in this space. And, I'm certain when I'm 60, I'll still be playing like Halo 2 single player. Like I will, like, I just know it at this point. If I'm not sick of it by now, like I can't imagine that I'll always have my constants. Tetris will always be there, and all these like other games that I play constantly. But yeah, I mean, I could see periods of time where maybe it's not as interesting as a place to focus on the new stuff, but that's the time to delve into the back catalog. That's the time to delve into my insane library of full of stuff that I own that I've never even played. And so, yeah, I mean, I hope that I like playing video games for as long as possible. But if I don't, then that's just how things go. Like, you can't plan that kind of thing. That's not something that you can just put on a clock arbitrarily. So I would say don't plan so rigidly. Just do what you like to do for as long as you like to do it, and as long as it's not sincerely interfering. Like, I wouldn't say like, oh man, I love Coke, I love methamphetamine. At that point I'd be like, maybe.
Right. You don't have
maybe slow down.
Yeah, you don't have to be so nihilistic in your outlook. But I do agree with you that if there's an organic thing, Flaunty, where you say there's these other things I want to do, let those other things overtake gaming organically. It'll just happen. You don't have to like make a hard and fast rule of when it will happen. It'll either happen or it won't. But to me, I look at gaming, it's almost like saying, I'm not reading books anymore. I'm not watching movies and TV shows anymore. I'm not listening to music. That would be like saying I'm not playing games. It's like, of course I'm going to play games. I mean, there might be a time when I don't listen to music, but I'm always going to listen to music. There might be times I don't play games, but I'll always listen to or I'll always play games. There's not going to be a time.
Yeah.
I might go 6 months without watching a movie, but I'm always open to watching a movie. So I think you have to look at it more like that, as opposed to saying like, I'm not hiking anymore, or I'm not cross stitching, or I just feel like it's too innate. And I think you're going to have a hard time walking away from it. I think you're giving yourself a little too much credit as well, Flanty. Like it's going to be hovering over you, not in a bad way, but in a way because it's a good time. Time sink and I'm really excited to see in 50 years the old ass people like us playing games still, because it's going to be happening and it's going to be awesome. Imagine the connections that older gamers and younger gamers will be able to make with each other, like over shared experiences and just old games and new games and talking and podcasting. And the future is so interesting from that perspective, I think. You know?
Yeah, I think the thing that interests me most is just the idea of like retirement homes full of people like doing like LAN shit.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, like that shit is hilarious to me. Like I think it's so funny to imagine, because this will happen in the future.
Definitely,
there will be just retirement homes where like there are just people being like, let's jump into a COD match. And it's so hilarious to imagine old people doing that, because we've never really had that before.
And then they say like 2009 rules and someone calls you the F word. I haven't heard that in 90 years.
I haven't heard that slur in 40 years.
It'll be true. I also think that older people, well, I don't know. I guess it'll be tested in the wild, but I just feel like so maybe beginning with Generation X and moving forward, those that played games and played them continuously, I think that we're going to find that our acuity and like our mental wellness is going to be better when we're older. We're going to fewer of us, I think, are going to lose touch with reality by being in virtual reality, by staying sharp, by keeping our mind active, by reading the words on the screen, by following the reticle and lining up X, Y, and Z axes and all of those things that your brain is doing, as opposed to just sitting there chain smoking cigarettes and watching TV like my grandma did when she was dying. You know, no offense to her, I loved her, but it's like she had no option. She didn't know what else to even do. You know,
yeah.
So
there is a unique benefit to spending a lot of time in and learning and understanding the concept of theoretical simulated spaces that I think will become incredibly useful the way that our technology is evolving and the way that the future is seeming to look. Like with VR becoming a lot more, like VR already is honestly like way more affordable and way more advanced than I thought it would be by now. I thought, like, I sincerely thought something like Boneworks would take a lot longer than it did. And I would imagine that by the time we're all in nursing homes, that'll be fucking wild.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's what that Black Mirror episode, Sans Junipero, is kind of about that, about like, virtual reality and living and meeting people and creating memories and lasting relationships and all that kind of stuff. There's a lot of fun potential that is like outside the games, where it's almost going to be more interesting to see what we're doing. What will this be like in 50 years?
Yeah.
Will there be like like I watch football and there's some old ass dudes on the set with some young ass guys that just got out of the league that are 30, and these guys are 70, but they played the same game and they experienced the same thing. And the one that kind of looks up to the other and be interested to see all that, but we have to give it a little more time. All right, my friends, that's all we have for this episode of Sacred Symbols, a PlayStation podcast. Another short one. They'll always be as long or as short as they need to be. Chris, do you have any closing comments?
Nah, man, I'm kind of like very excited to check out Grand Theft Auto 4. Like I've been thinking about it since it was mentioned.
Cool, man. That'll be a fun one to play. It's been so long. I would love to go back to that at some point too.
Yeah.
Dustin, do you have any closing comments?
I just want to stand by and reiterate what I said earlier, and that The Last Guardian is better than Shadow of the Colossus.
Okay.
And I just want to stand by it.
All right,
and no one's going to convince me otherwise.
Wow, that's
so. And I didn't plan on that take with this shirt today, but I'm just going to lean into it. So hopefully everyone has a nice weekend despite me saying that, and we'll see you next week.
Oh, wow. Yeah, very good. Now let's fight about it, since that's what everyone wants to do. We'll try to.
Well,
no one will change their minds, but we'll just argue about it for no reason.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we appreciate you out there. Thank you so much for your love, kindness, and support of all things Last Stand Media. Patreon.com/laststandmedia. Laststandmedia.store for our new merch. We appreciate you over there. Leave us nice reviews, comments, subscribe, all those different things, depending on where you are. We'll see you next time. Until then, goodbye.
See ya.
Take care, guys.
Sacred Symbols, a PlayStation podcast, is a product and trademark of Last Stand Media and Colin's Last Stand LLC, and is proudly recorded in the USA. The show is conceived by, is written by, and is directed by me, Colin Moriarty. My co-hosts are Chris Raygun Maldonado and Dustin Furman. The show is produced by executive producer Dustin Furman. It's edited by associate producer Ben Smith. All of Last Stand's theme music is by my best friend, Ramon Narvaez. As you know, all of Last Stand shows, including Sacred Symbols, are fan-funded on Patreon at patreon.com/laststandmedia. The following names are at the producer level on Patreon, our highest tier, and we're grateful for your thoughtful and kind contributions to our independent endeavor. Thank you.